Has it really been 200 episodes? Indeed it has. What is up, everybody? This is your boy, Teran Rodriguez, bringing you the 200th episode of Set Point. And as always, we have ourselves a jam-packed show as we have a lot to get into. As we have not one, but two big-time guests. We have Mark Rosen, the former University of Michigan women's volleyball coach and current Southern Exposure assistant coach. And we might have Avery Drost, current AVP beach volleyball player and former Mira Costa High School boys volleyball coach, on as a guest as well. Also, we might get into a little bit of volleyball as there was some VNL and there was also some NVA. But I also want to discuss with you all how Set Point came to be, what has been accomplished with Set Point, and basically how I will continue to grow Set Point as Set Point continues to evolve. So hand me a volleyball, set the net, because I'm about to serve you up some volleyball action here on Set Point. This is Teran Rodriguez bringing you the 200th episode of Set Point here on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports. And welcome one, welcome all to the 200th episode of Set Point. Thank you all for joining me on this beautiful Monday evening, Monday afternoon, Monday wherever you are listening from. Either way, you have made your way into Set Point, the 200th episode. And without any further delay, let's do this. But first and foremost, Set Point would not be where it's at without IE Sports Radio providing the platform. Please do follow IE Sports Radio on Twitter, TikTok, and on Instagram, as well as Facebook. We also have a website, www.iesportsradio.com, and when you go there, you will see all 30 of our shows, including this one, Set Point. And in addition, our website also includes our blog page, our Hall of Fame, and our merchandise shop. When you go to our shop, you will see t-shirts, tank tops, caps, and hoodies, with more items to be included in the near future. For the past 9 years, IE Sports Radio has been bringing you amazing content ranging from interviewing legendary athletes, coaches, and other authorized media personnel to building tailor-made shows dedicated to all major sports cities around the country. All the while, we've continued to be by the fans and for the fans, and with your help, we are ready to take the next biggest step. Thank you to everyone for all of your support and for making IE Sports Radio your direct feed for all that sports. And I thank you all from the bottom of my heart for all of your support for Set Point. Without you, the listeners, without you, the fans, Set Point would not amount to much. I really do appreciate that, but I'll get more into the sentimental and sappiness of that later. As I want to acknowledge the chat room, Larry B says, Happy 200. Teran, thank you very much, buddy. And without any further delay, let's begin. So I was going to have one of my guests on, but unfortunately, I have not heard back from him, and sadly, I unfortunately can't have him on as a guest for the time being. So I'm going to have to flip the show around, but I'm going to continue on with the show. The show must go on. I'm not going to let that slow me down. So we had some NVA going on last weekend, and boy howdy, Event 4 did not disappoint. Even though there were no 5-set matches and there was some drama, it still did not disappoint. So I did get word, I'm not going to go into the official word on, but we got some news on Saturday, but more on that later. So Friday's matches, we had the Los Angeles Blaze taking on the Philadelphia Founders. So it was the Blaze versus the Founders, the winless Los Angeles Blaze trying to get at least one win, taking on the Founders, trying to improve their playoff chances. First set, the Blaze came out guns a-blazing. They came out hot. They took that first set 25-20. Dexter Campbell and Andrew Dubé, along with Charles Belvin, led the way. They combined for 13 kills. It was a very good start for the Blaze, and they topped it off with a 25-23 second set win as Charles Belvin was just going all out. He really wanted to win. If you checked out my post-game interview with him, you'll see why. So the Blazers were up 2-0, and they hadn't been up 2-0 in a match since Event 1 when they took on the Chicago Untouchables. But then in set 3, the Founders rallied to take that third set 25-23 as they got a good amount of kills from Langston Payne as well as Peter Namiotko. But then in the fourth set, the Blaze came up big down the stretch as Charles Belvin, Dexter Campbell, and Andrew Dubé all had double-digit kills. They also got help from Daniel Matheny, and they had a new setter, Seamus McDonough, as he also had 2 service aces, 3 kills, as the Blaze finally wound up winning their first match of the 2023 NVA season, winning it 25-21, and it was a great match. And I'm just going to say, I guaranteed at least one win for the Blaze. I even told them I guaranteed the Blaze one win because last week when I was previewing the Los Angeles Blazers matches, I said it best, the Blazers are going to win at least one match in their next 3 games, whether it's against the Founders, the Pythons, or the Untouchables. And they did so against the Founders, so that was a big win for the Blaze. Tough loss for the Founders, as unfortunately they just were not the better team. And this is no disrespect to the Founders, as the Founders were led by Peter Namiotko, who had 14 kills. Langston Payne was right behind him with 11 kills. So overall for the Founders, this kind of hurts them in terms of their possible playoff hopes. So we'll see what happens with them, but overall it was just not a good loss for them. Like, it was a bad loss. So we'll see what happens with them going forward. But overall, I think if they're going to want a match back, I think this is the one. So then second match we had was the Florida Southern Exposure taking on the Puerto Rico Pythons. So the Exposure was coming off of an impressive 5-set win over the New Jersey Freedom, while the Pythons were coming off of their first ever victory over the Chicago Untouchables. The Pythons actually had a good portion of their team. It wasn't just Jair Santiago leading the way. They actually had a very good portion of their team helping out Santiago, as it actually, surprisingly, the first set, they won at 25-20, but it wasn't Santiago leading the way. It was actually Ricky Vega leading it with 5 kills, and Santiago was actually tied for second in terms of kills following the set, as Ivan Fernandez and Ishmael Alamar each had 3 kills to go along with Jair Santiago's 3 kills. So very surprising to say the least. And Sam Jackman and Zach Meyer were obviously the two-headed monster, but it wasn't anyone else outside of that. Then the second set, it was quite the dramatic set, as Exposure really needed to get their you-know-what together. But for the Pythons, I give them a lot of credit. They really hung tough, and Jair Santiago started to come alive. He had 8 kills in that second set alone, as the Pythons took that second set 27-25, and I think that was kind of the tipping point right there. If the Pythons don't take that set, then Exposure have a little bit more confidence going into set number 3, and the Pythons kind of look at this saying, uh-oh, we're tied 1-1, and the other team has quite a bit of momentum. As Sam Jackman had 13 kills going into set 3, as well as Zach Meyer, who had 10 kills. But Jair Santiago was feeling it. Then in set number 3, it was also another down-to-the-wire set. Believe it or not, Southern Exposure led 22-20 after the Pythons lost a challenge. And then everyone was probably thinking, this one's at least going to go 4. But the Pythons scored the last 5 straight points, and then they wound up winning the set 25-22 and the match. Jair Santiago led the way with 17 kills, but I thought an unsung hero was Ishmael Alamar, who had 9 kills to go along with a block and a service ace. Ricky Vega had 8 kills, though he did have to leave the third set as, unfortunately, his blood sugar was low and he was kind of losing his vision. But the fact that the Pythons overcame that shows how resilient and how they're starting to come together as a team. And this is a huge win for the Pythons. This is definitely their biggest win of the season. Yes, they also beat the Untouchables, but the Untouchables lost one of their top players in Andrew Kohut. So I think this is definitely the Pythons' biggest win by far. And it gives the Pythons a little bit more playoff life. Next up, we had the Las Vegas Ramblers taking on the Utah Stingers. This was the battle of the two hot teams. The Stingers came in having won 5 straight, while the Ramblers came in having won 4 straight. First set, the Ramblers took it 25-19. They kind of overcame a slow start, but then they just took charge at the Stingers as they basically had a balanced attack led by Jalen Penrose. Felix Chapman, I guess, had 3 kills, so I guess I wouldn't call it a balanced attack, but they just did everything correct to basically slow down the Stingers. Sam Coburn led the way with 3 kills after the set. Stingers only had 8 kills following that first set, so that's kind of where the Stingers were offensively. And then the second set, it was quite close, as the Stingers knew they could not afford to be down 0-2, but sadly for them, the Ramblers did not get the memo, as they took that second set 25-23. Penrose was still doing his thing. He had 9 kills following the second set. Felix Chapman was starting to heat up. He had 6 kills, but Colton Cowell, he had 7 kills. Colton Cowell, for you Hawaii fans, and I know a lot of y'all follow me on Twitter, he was definitely doing his thing offensively, and he even had 2 service aces and a block. Meanwhile, for the Stingers, Kevin Coburn was starting to catch fire, while Sam Coburn was still chugging along, as well as Ian Eschenberg. Then in set number 3, it was another tight set, but the Ramblers kept a healthy lead for the most part, and eventually they wound up winning that third set 25-22 and the match. I give the credit to the Stingers. They could have been down a whole lot more, and they could have lost that set by a little bit worse score than that, but they were just resilient as heck, as the Ramblers were led by Jalen Penrose, who had 11 kills. Felix Chapman had 10 kills to go along with 2 aces. Penrose also had 3 aces as well. For the Stingers, they were led by Kevin Coburn, who had 12 kills. Ian Eschenberg follows him up with 8 kills, and then Sam Coburn had 6 kills. Patrick Paragas also had 3 service aces as he was doing setting duties for the Stingers. As Davidson Crooks pops into the chat room, he says, "What's good?" Just recapping some NVA, as my guest is unfortunately not here at the moment, but if he does come, then we'll just jump to a commercial break and then we'll bring him on. But if he doesn't, then we'll just continue to talk more NVA. So the last match of day 1 of event 4 is Texas Tyrants versus Orange County Stunners. This was kind of the match of the day right here. That along with Stingers, Ramblers. The Tyrants did have a new look, as they did not have Ryan Mather, unfortunately. And that's a big unfortunately, because Ryan Mather was kind of their second head of their 2-headed monster, along with Jake Langlois. The good news is for the Tyrants is that they saw the return of Gianluca Grasso. The bad news is that this is his first match, and obviously he's going to be extremely rusty, as he was playing overseas prior to this. And he wasn't 100%. So the first set, obviously not having Ryan Mather did not help, as the Stunners took that first set 25-20. Stunners had a lot of weapons all over the place. They had Spencer Olivier, they had Matt Hilling, Nick West was a force on the service line, and in terms of killing, well, not in the first set, but it was just offensively he was a serving machine, and he was just killing the ball really well. They also had Corey Chavers, who made his return, as well as Tanner Woods. They also debuted Grant Maroki, another former Long Beach State men's volleyball player. So Matt Prosser, if you're not putting 2 plus 2 together, Matt Prosser is a former Long Beach State men's volleyball player. And then he also got Spencer Olivier, Long Beach State men's volleyball player, Calvin Sanborn, Long Beach State men's volleyball player, Grant Maroki, Long Beach State men's volleyball player, and yeah, that's it. I want to say he had another one, but yeah, it's just Grant, Spencer, and Calvin. I was going to say he had Shane, but Shane's on the Stingers. So that's 3 out of 4 of the Long Beach State men's volleyball graduates from this year that he has on his team. But Prosser was able to get those three just because he's seen those three and because he played by played their matches. So obviously it was so easy to just see them every single night. But that's probably just my intake. It's probably my take. I don't know if that's the actual reason, but honestly, Matt Prosser struck gold with those three. Then the second set, the Stunners wound up winning that second set 25-20 by the exact same score as the first set, as Spencer Olivier was still doing his thing. Corey Chavers was shaking off the rust and doing his thing. Matt Hilling also shook off the rust. And like I said, Corey Chavers also doing his thing as well. And the scary thing about the Stunners is that they only had 3 blocks, and they had 2 fewer service aces through 2 sets. So when you're the Tyrants, you know you're missing Ryan Mather, and you just weren't, on your A game. And then the third set, it was basically the same thing. The Stunners wound up winning that set 25-20, and honestly, it was pretty much the same thing. Stunners jumped out to a big lead, and it wasn't so much the Tyrants were bad, it was just so much that they were really missing Ryan Mather. Jake Langlois finished with 11 kills. Austin Matautia had 2 service aces to go along with 9 kills. Jake Langlois also had 3 service aces. Gianluca Grasso was able to work his way back into the lineup. He had 2 blocks to go along with 5 kills. For the Stunners, they were led by Spencer Olivier, who had 9 kills, 1 service ace, and 2 blocks. Matt Hilling added 8 kills to go along with 1 block. And Corey Chavers also had 8 kills as well. So overall for the Stunners, I really think that they really showed their true potential of their team. And I want to say that this win punched their ticket to the playoffs. Whether it was this win or not, I really think the Stunners showed their potential, and this win, I think, punched their ticket to the playoffs, and it was big time right there. So overall for the Stunners, I was very impressed by them. Obviously, it would have been great to see the Tyrants at full strength, but it is what it is. Then we jump to Saturday. Now, Saturday is when we officially got the news, as I, Teran Rodriguez, am your one-stop shop for all that is NVA news. So a lot of things happened over the weekend. So starters, all these NVA matches were not held at Long Beach City College. They were held at Artesia High School, just because, unfortunately, Long Beach City College was unable to cater to the NVA for that weekend, which is ridiculous, just because they signed the contract way before the season started. Matter of fact, way before the calendar year began. So I kind of find it a little head-scratching that Long Beach City kind of dropped the ball when it came to the NVA. But this is just my opinion, and the disclaimer's in the bottom of the show. Also, and I said last episode that Artesia High is a good gym with a higher ceiling. No. I was sadly mistaken. It does not really have the best ceiling, unfortunately. But I will say this, its facility is nice. Its gym is really nice. I will say where I sat, I was able to get good shots of the action, and we were able to get good video cameras of the action. So all in all, for the event being at Artesia High School, it wasn't all so bad, but overall, I just did not like how Long Beach City College kind of dropped the ball on us. But I digress on that. Obviously, having a low ceiling just did not help the players. It just was not fun. And then the second set of news in terms of this past weekend was there was no live streaming. So unfortunately, there was no live streaming just because some unforeseen events happened behind the scenes. I'm not going to really get what had happened, but there was no live streaming, so everything had to be streamed on Instagram and TikTok Live. And also, I had to live tweet out most of the matches, which I normally do on an occasion. But it was more of a social media presence in terms of the NVA. Now we jump on into Saturday's news. So it was officially released Saturday that the NVA announced that the Chicago Untouchables would not be attending Event 4 due to unforeseen and unfortunate events. Now, they did not say which event, what had happened with the Chicago Untouchables, but they were not going to be attending Event 4, bottom line, and they could not spill any details whatsoever. And for purposes of, I don't want to get in trouble with the NVA, or I don't want the NVA to get in any trouble with the Chicago Untouchables or anything, I'm not going to get into any of those details. But all in all, it is unfortunate that the Chicago Untouchables did not attend, and there is no word on what's going to happen with their matches, if they're going to be forfeits or if they're going to be made up. But either way, I hope I hope they do get made up, because if they do, then hopefully for the Untouchables' sake, that will basically give them a fighting chance to possibly, hence the word possibly, make the playoffs. Because they're still in the playoff hunt, along with the Pythons. But if it's ruled as a forfeit loss for the Untouchables, then that's really unfortunate, because then they'll be behind the 8 ball when they have to play the Los Angeles Blaze, and they also have to play the Texas Tyrants. Tyrants are also vying for the top seed in the National Conference, so they have no intention of sitting their starters, especially when the Stunners are facing the Pythons and the Freedom. So there's that right there. But the Untouchables were slated to play the New Jersey Freedom and the... Oh, I'm blanking on the other... San Diego Wild. That was the other team. San Diego Wild and the New Jersey Freedom, but unfortunately that was not the case. Or I'm sorry, they were supposed to play the New Jersey Freedom on Saturday, and then they were supposed to play the San Diego Wild to close out Sunday's slate of matches. But sadly, that was not the case. I also want to acknowledge another person in the live Spreaker chat room, Aaron Yowell. I hope I said that correctly. Yowell? Yellow? Either way, our new host of our Colorado sports show, thank you for popping into the chat room. I really do appreciate you saying, let's go 200, congrats. Thanks, man. So definitely do check out Aaron's show. It is called Mile High Musings. It goes live every Sunday at 7 p.m. Pacific Time, 8 p.m. Mountain Standard Time. Talks all things Colorado sports, such as the Denver Nuggets, the Denver Broncos, the Colorado Avalanche, the Colorado Rockies, the University of Colorado Buffaloes. The list goes on and on. He talks all things Colorado sports. Bring back the Colorado Kraken. Ahem! Anyway, so back to the NVA and day 2 of event number 4. So we had the San Diego Wild taking on the Inland Empire Matadors. Nick England's team taking on Larry B's team that he loves oh so dear. Unfortunately, the first set, the Wild had to basically take off the kid gloves, not that they were wearing any, as the Wild took the first set 25-20, as the Wild... The scary thing about the Wild is that their kill leader was Kendall Ratter, who had 4 kills. That's when you know how scary deep this team was. And they actually had a new setter. They didn't have their standard setter, Michael Keegan. They had a new setter, Brett Alderman. So that was a thing right there. And then Nick England really did his homework when it came to the Inland Empire Matadors. And then through the first set, they had 15 kills, 4 of which went to Kendall Ratter, 3 of which went to Brandon Rattray, Uchenna Ufoa, and Sam Burgee, and then 2 went to Matt Kinigi. Matadors were led by Antonio Anguizzola, who had 3 kills. So all in all for the Matadors, it was just not their set. They were kind of close with them through that first set, through the first part of that first set, and then the Wild just kicked it into overdrive. Then the second set, Wild were up 16-8 at one point, I want to say, and then eventually it was 16-16. That's what I'm estimating, but eventually it was 16-16. But then the Wild, just like before, they kind of kicked it into overdrive. I feel they just were in cruise control in that second set, but then they just kicked it into overdrive, and then they won the second set 25-22. The Wild, through 2 sets, were led by Uchenna Ufoa and Kendall Ratter, who each had 7 kills. Matadors had 5 different players with 3 kills, which I found rather interesting. So that's when you know the offense was balanced, but not ultimately productive. And then the third set, it was just more of the same, with the Wild just showing off their true potential, not their true potential, but their strong potential of how they're supposed to be, as they took the third set 25-16 in the match. They won off of a service ace from, I think it was Christopher Schaefer? If not, it was Nick. Yeah, I think it was Chris Schaefer. So, all in all for the San Diego Wild, it was just another day at the office. No, nothing against the Matadors, but the Wild were just the better team, as the Wild were led by Uchenna Ufoa, 9 kills, 2 blocks, 2 service aces. Sam Berge and Brandon Rattray each had 6 kills and 1 service ace, and Rattray had 1 block. Kanigi had 5 kills and 4 blocks to go along with 1 service ace. The Matadors were led by Cesar Medina, who had 6 kills. That's when you know the offense was just not clicking for them, when they only had 6 kills as their kill leader. Then next up we had the Texas Tyrants taking on the Utah Stingers. The battle of the two teams that were shorthanded and that were coming off of a loss from Friday. The first set, the Tyrants really broke out the pimp hand, as nothing against the Stingers, but they took the first set 25-13. Now, here's the thing. If you weren't at this match, you weren't following along on the Instagram live feed or the TikTok live feed or my live tweets, you don't know what had happened. The Stingers were down to 7 players, and it got to the point where Russell Holmes, their head coach, their GM, their owner, their do-it-all guy, had to suit up. Keep in mind, Russell Holmes said he was done with volleyball. He wasn't going to suit up anymore. He was done, and he was going to hang up the sneakers and just stick to coaching. But he had to break out the sneakers for this event, just because for this day, he was down to 6 players, and he needed a 7th player, otherwise he couldn't have a full rotation, otherwise his team would get disqualified. So, Russell Holmes was back playing. Russell Holmes, the former, I need to get this correctly, Russell Holmes, the former Team USA men's volleyball player and former BYU star, as well as the former Utah Stingers player and real estate agent, suited up for the Utah Stingers. And through that first set, he had 1 kill and 1 block. The dude looked pretty solid for him making his first start this season. You gotta remember, this is his first start this season. But the Stingers just did not do him any favors. They only had 5 kills in the first set. 5 kills in 1 set. I know that they only had 13 points altogether, but that is not doing you a whole lot of favors. The Tyrants only had 8 players of their own, as they were shorthanded, and you gotta remember, they did not have Ryan Mather, but honestly, the Tyrants just really smacked the Stingers silly. Then the second set, the Stingers showed a little bit more resilience. The players that the Stingers did have, they had Shane Holdaway playing opposite when his primary position is middle. They had Kevin Coburn shifting to the outside and not jump serving it. Russell Holmes kind of got it together. Ian Eschenberg was starting to take off. But unfortunately, it was still not enough as the Tyrants took that second set 27-25. Austin Matauatia was really starting to come into his own at the outside hitter position. Jake Langlois also was doing his thing from the right side. Gianluca Grasso was starting to get a little bit warm as well. And Skylar Marushigi was doing great things at the middle position along with Joseph Grosh. Then in the third set, it was pretty much more of the same as the Stingers kind of fell in a little bit of an early hole. But for the Tyrants, they couldn't quite put away the Stingers just yet, as I want to say it was like 24-19, and then the Stingers scored 3 straight points. But then the Tyrants eventually put it away with the kill in the middle, and Texas bounced back with a 25-22 win in set 3, and they bounced back in the match, as the Tyrants were led by Austin Matauatia, who had 12 kills. Jake Langlois added 11 kills and 2 blocks. Gianluca Grasso added 8 kills to go along with the block. For the Stingers, they were led by Ian Eschenberg, who had 10 kills. Kevin Coburn had 7 kills. And for yours truly, Russell Holmes, well, not yours truly, Russell Holmes, or for the man, the myth, the legend, Russell Holmes, he had 3 kills to go along with 2 blocks. So all in all, for the Tyrants, it was just a great day at the office, a great bounce-back win. And they also clinched a playoff berth, as that pretty much locked up the National Coastal Division. And then the last match of Day 2 of Event 4 was the Las Vegas Ramblers taking on the Orange County Stunners. Now, I was going to release a feature on this rivalry, because I think this is the biggest rivalry in the NVA. Unfortunately, the NVA website has been having problems, and it's been glitching out, and sadly, as of late, no new articles have been posted, and sadly, if you have an iPhone, I don't know if it's on my end when it comes to my iPhone, but sadly, my iPhone just doesn't want to update in terms of the teams and in terms of the standings. But all in all, the NVA website just hasn't been reacting greatly. So sadly, I couldn't get that Orange County Stunners Las Vegas Ramblers article up. And I really would have, I think y'all would have liked it. For those that read my NVA articles, I really do appreciate it. We'll try to get those out and pumping more on social media. And by we, I mean the NVA. But anyway, so Adam Kark pops in the chat room. He says, congratulations on getting to episode 200. Thank you, Adam. I appreciate you. And I appreciate you, to quote you, keeping the seat warm on the Monday night slot. All right, so Ramblers Stunners. So this rivalry match was indeed a great one. So let's jump into the great part of this set. So the Ramblers led 23-19. Then the Stunners go on a 5-0 run. They have set point. And then the Ramblers go on a 3-0 run, take the opening set. And that just went to show how impressive this rivalry was, as the Ramblers were led by Jalen Penrose, who had 6 kills. Felix Chapman had 5 kills. Then the Stunners were led by Spencer Olivier, 7 kills. Corey Chavers has 4 kills. Then the second set, Stunners kind of got their you-know-what together, as they took that second set 25-17. Spencer Olivier was leading the way with 9 kills. Corey Chavers was getting his swagger back with 8 kills and 2 blocks. Nick West had 2 service aces. I really think that the Stunners kind of caught their second wind after dropping that close first set. The Ramblers were led by Jalen Penrose, who had 12 kills. Felix Chapman had 8 kills. And this was through the first 2 sets. The problem with the Ramblers was they didn't really have a big attack. And I overheard Matt Prosser in the huddle saying they don't have a BIC. And any BIC attack that the Ramblers had was backfired. It just went out of bounds, or it went wide, or you know. Another thing that really hurt the Ramblers is that they didn't have that number 3 option. It was just Felix Chapman or Jalen Penrose. So it was only a matter of time before the Stunners caught on to that whole little spiel and whole little strategy. And I also got to give a shout-out to Hui Ding, the libero of Orange County Stunners, as I think he was an unsung hero. I think that the liberos don't get too much love, in my opinion, when it comes to the sport of volleyball. But I think Ding was flying all over the place. He was passing well. He even had a couple of sets, which I really think were impressive. So I got to give my flowers to Hui Ding. Then in set number 3, the Stunners really let the Ramblers have it in that set. They won at 25-16. Spencer Olivier was leading the way with 13 kills through 3 sets. Corey Chavers had 10 kills. Matt Hilling, 6 kills. Nick West was up to 4 service aces, and he had 3 kills and 4 blocks. And I even said this on the Set Point Twitter account. Nick West was an unsung hero. He may not get the kills like Olivier, Chavers, and Hilling does, but when he's doing the other little things, it makes the Stunners a much better and bigger team. Jalen Penrose had 15 kills, Felix Chapman had 11 kills, and their next kill leader after Chapman was Kevin Voss, who had 4 kills. Kind of concerning if you ask me. You kind of need to have that number 3 option, because it can't just be a 2-headed monster. I mean, you can, but it just won't be ultimately as effective. But I digress. Then in set 4, after the first point of set number 4, Felix Chapman was favoring his abdomen, and it looked like it was a core injury or an abdomen injury, so he went to the trainer, and he was pretty much on the bench for most of the set, and his return was questionable from what it was looking like, and Ramblers were down 5-0, and I was just thinking this could be what hurts them. But to the Ramblers' credit, they really stepped up, as Eric Beattie stepped up in the absence of Felix Chapman. Kyler Pressure stepped up in the middle. Kevin Vaz stepped up when he could. Jonathan Carlson, even though he's a serving sub, he stepped up when he could. Jalen Penrose had to play Superman while Felix Chapman was out. They actually led at the media timeout, but then the Stunners kind of turned the tide. Felix Chapman actually did come back late in the set, but unfortunately it was kind of too little too late, and there was just so much drama in that fourth set. There was a play where it was 19-18 in favor of the Ramblers, and there was a net violation called on the Ramblers. Ramblers challenged it, saying that Eric Beattie didn't touch the net, and the Stunners touched the net, and the Ramblers won that challenge. But then the Stunners challenged, saying that the Ramblers touched the net prior to that on a swing from Corey Chavers, and that was indeed the case. And that was what really confused everybody, not just from the fans, but from the players as well. So it was just a mind-blowing match. And in the end, Corey Chavers really came up big down the stretch. I want to say he had like 3 of the last points for the Stunners as they took the third and final set, 25-23. He even had the match-clinching kill as the Stunners went a perfect 2-0. They snapped the Ramblers' 5-game winning streak, and they clinched a share of the National Central Division. And they also clinched a spot in the playoffs. But Matt Prosser said it best. The job's not finished. He has that Mamba mentality, the whole job's not finished, and what the goal is for Matt Prosser and the Stunners is they want to be the best team or the last team standing by the time or at the end of the championship. They want to be the last team standing, and they want to win that championship and hoist up the NVA Cup. So for the Stunners, they were led by Corey Chavers, who had 17 kills, 2 blocks, and 1 service ace. Spencer Olivier had 14 kills. Matt Hilling had 8 kills and 1 service ace. Nick West had 5 blocks, 4 service aces, 4 kills. For the Ramblers, they were led by Jalen Penrose, who had 20 kills. Felix Chapman had 12 kills. Eric Beattie had 6 kills and 2 blocks. Unfortunately, it was not enough. Fortunately for the Ramblers, they actually did clinch their division as the Southern Exposure's loss, along with the Inland Empire Matadors' loss, did clinch the Ramblers' division outright for them. So the Ramblers, despite losing to the Stunners, did clinch a spot in the playoffs. So for them, they were able to clinch a spot in the playoffs despite losing to their semi-long-time rival, Orange County Stunners. I have a feeling we could see that team again, or those two will meet again, as I really think we could be seeing I think this is indeed the biggest rivalry between the two teams. And honestly, I think this is kind of the Boston Celtics, Los Angeles Lakers of the NVA, or any of these other long-time rivalries. So I would not sleep on this rivalry at all. And as Matt Prosser once told me, this is the rivalry with the most history, because these two teams met in the last 2 NVA championships, with the Ramblers winning it last year and the Stunners winning it the year before. And then the two also met in pool play, where the Stunners wound up winning that as well. And there's also been a lot of dramatic flair when it came to these matches. And you saw, if you were at this match, you had to have seen it to believed it. So you can't you have to see these matches to believe it. So now let's zoom on over to day number 3, just because we have 13 minutes before I have to go on to my commercial break, and I have to bring on my first guest. So day number 3, as it featured the Florida Southern Exposure and the Philadelphia Founders. Now, here's the thing. Now here's the thing between those two teams. The Founders had to win this game to keep pace in their conference, as well as the Exposure. If the Founders won, there would have been a three-way tie for the final playoff spot between the Matadors, the Exposure, and themselves. If the Exposure won, then they would have been all alone in fourth place. So all in all, for this was a big-time match. This was vastly underrated, in my opinion. I really think this was an underrated rivalry, in my opinion. I wouldn't say rivalry, but this was a very underrated match. So, for the Exposure, they fell behind 7-1, and I was like, uh-oh, this is not good. And I will just say this, Brendan Spolnick was really serving heat. I'm just going to say that right there. He was really serving heat. But slowly but surely, the Southern Exposure, or the Florida Southern Exposure, were making their way back. And eventually, they caught up to them late in the set, and they wound up winning the first set 25-23. Through the first set, Sam Jackman led the way with 6 kills, and Logan Riding was riding right behind him with 4 kills. Surprisingly, Zach Meyer only had 1 kill, which was a little concerning, but hey, what can you do? These players are human too. Peter Namiotko led the Founders with 5 kills, and Brendan Spolnick had 3 kills. Second set for both these teams, Exposure jumped out to a 10-6 lead, and despite the Founders' efforts, they stuck with them through thick and thin, but it was just not enough as the Exposure took that second set 25-22 in a 2-0 lead in the match as the Exposure were led by Sam Jackman, 11 kills. Zach Meyer had 6 kills as he had 5 in set number 2. The Founders were led by Peter Namiotko, who had 8 kills and 2 blocks. I want to say Brendan Spolnick's 4 service aces in set 1 was also a record for number of service aces by a player in a single set. But we'll see. And then in set 3, the Exposure really just sucked it to the Founders as they took it 25-10. It was just a strong set for the Exposure as they wound up winning off of a walk-off service ace. As Zach Meyer had the ace, Jackman led the way with 18 kills to go along with 2 blocks. Meyer had 11 kills, 2 service aces. The Founders were led by Langston Payne and Peter Namiotko, who each had 8 kills. So for the Exposure, they were all alone in 4th place for the time being, unless the Inland Empire Matadors beat the New Jersey Freedom. And then for the Founders, they are now in a very, very sticky situation in terms of trying to make the playoffs. Next up, we have Puerto Rico Pythons versus the Los Angeles Blaze. So the first set, both these teams were fighting tooth and nail. Biggest lead for either of these teams through the media timeout was 2 points. But eventually the Pythons pulled away and won the set 25-22. Then the second set, the Blaze jumped out to a 13-8 lead. They were throwing a block party, but then the Pythons crashed the party and eventually took that second set 25-23 off of a net violation from the Blaze. And then the third set, the Pythons put the squeeze on the Blaze and doused their fire as they won that third set 25-18. As once again, having most of their roster really helped. Arnaldo Torres came off the bench and had 9 kills, which was a big-time unsung hero performance in my opinion. Jair Santiago led the way with 15 kills. Ivan Fernandez had 8 kills for the Pythons. For the Blaze, Charles Belvin led them with 9 kills, while Dexter Campbell had 8 kills. Andrew Dubé also had 9 kills for the Blaze as well. Last match of event number 4 was New Jersey Freedom taking on the Inland Empire Matadors. First set was a wild one as the Freedom led 24-22. Matadors tied it up, and Matadors also dodged 3 set points from the Freedom, and it took 5 set points for them to win the first set, but they took it 31-29. Then the second set, the shoe was on the other foot this time, as the Matadors had set point after a service ace from Antonio Anguizzola, but then they hit the ball off the tape and then it went out of bounds untouched. And then the Matadors got called for being out of rotation, and eventually the Freedom, they needed 3 set points, but they took the second set 27-25, and I felt that the pain and the heartbreak from the Matadors after they lost that set point opportunity. That just really hurt. And then in the third set, the Freedom really took charge and won that set 25-17. And this was kind of the ultimate test. Can the Freedom win in 4 sets or prevent this from going 5 or win in 5 sets? The answer was the Freedom wound up winning in 4 sets as they took it 25-22. It looked like the Matadors were going to force a 5th set or make at least one final push, in which they did. But then a kill from Tim Ferreter was able to close the door and end the match in 4. As the Freedom only had 8 players, as they had a whirlwind of a weekend, as Joe Norman led the way with 15 kills, 3 blocks, and 2 aces. Ferreter had 14 kills and 2 service aces. They also got 9 kills each from Matt Buffum and Tom Burrell, 8 kills from Derek Sullivan to go along with 2 blocks, and Jacob Milnizik had 5 kills to go along with 3 aces. For the Matadors, they were led by Luis Lopez, who had 17 kills, while Antonio Anguizzola had 9 kills to go along with 5 aces and a block. Cesar Medina, I wouldn't say he was his greatest self, but he added 7 kills, which wasn't bad. I want to say he came off the bench, but I can't be ultimately certain. But all in all, that was that for NVA event number 4. We only have one more event before the playoffs start, and that is pretty much that when it comes to event number 4 and for the NVA. As honestly, yeah, it was a interesting event number 4. But I will just say this, I hope we never have to play in a high school gymnasium ever again. And I'm just saying, I will gladly, hence the word gladly, take playing at a college gymnasium anytime, any place, anywhere. But yeah, we're down to just one event and 3 teams. I know the Ramblers have clinched a playoff spot. Stingers have clinched a playoff spot. Wild have clinched a playoff spot. Tyrants and Stunners have clinched a playoff spot. And that's pretty much it. So 5 out of the 8 teams have clinched a playoff spot in the NVA playoffs. So that remains 1 team remaining in the American Conference, while 2 teams remain in the National Conference. So we shall see. And yes, it's Drewski. A better venue always works. Just because when it comes to ceilings, no pro volleyball player wants to play with a low ceiling. Like when you compare the Long Beach City College Gymnasium ceiling compared to the Artesia High School gymnasium ceiling, and this is no knock on the Artesia High School gymnasium ceiling, it's no contest. But I am grateful to Artesia High School for the hospitality and for everything that they've done and for letting them lend their gym to the NVA. I really do appreciate them and all their hard work and for lending them the gym to the NVA. We really do appreciate it, as well as myself. All right, that is going to do it for the NVA portion of the show. When we get back, I will be bringing on my guest, Mark Rosen, the assistant coach for the Florida Southern Exposure. So keep it locked here. You are listening to the 200th episode of Set Point here on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that sports. We'll be right back after this.
Hello, sports fans. It's me, your boy Larry B, and I want to walk you through the world of sports. No, not just the mainstream major TV deal type sports, although those are important too. But let me be your guide through your journey of all sports, from college to the pros, the minors, and everything in between. Each week, we are talking sports galore with true diehards just like you from a hardcore fan's perspective that's sure to quench your thirst around leagues you may know all too well and some you may even discover here. That's right, sports fans. If you love sports of all kinds, enjoy hearing amazing sports stories, and respect all sports because you know how difficult any of them can be to play or compete in, then this is your show. Join me, your boy Larry B, on The Defining Moment each week here on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports, and let the sports come to you.
Hello, ladies and sinners. Hello, sports fans around the world. Hello, IE Sports family. This is Cale Henderson, the host of IE Vegas, the Sin City Sports Show, presented by IE Sports Radio. If you folks are interested in sports in the Vegas area, if you're wanting to have a blast for 1 hour every Tuesday night from 7 p.m. Pacific Standard Time to 8 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, this is a show built for the Vegas sports fans, where we feature the Las Vegas Raiders, the Las Vegas Golden Knights, the Las Vegas Aces, and the University of Las Vegas, Nevada Rebels. Hopefully, fingers crossed, MLB team coming soon. Either way, if you folks are looking to have a blast for 1 hour each and every week, tune in Tuesday, 7 p.m. Pacific Standard Time to 8 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. If you folks are interested in Vegas sports news, go to our Twitter, at SinCities_IESR, and you can speak with me, the host, Cale Henderson, at Cale_Henderson on Twitter. At any time, be happy to reply. Always want to reach out to our fans. Again, the Sin City Sports Show, presented by IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports.
Sports fans, do you like teams that are tough, cities that are tougher, and fan bases that are passionate about their teams? How about teams that are historic and stadiums that are iconic? Then you belong in Chicago, and you need to check out Chi-Town Weekly. Join me, Adam Kernan, every week as we keep up with all things Chicago sports. Bears, Bulls, Blackhawks, Cubs, White Sox. We'll cover them all, plus more. The Windy City is always buzzing, and we'll keep you up on all the big games and major stories. So tune in to Chi-Town Weekly every week right here on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports. Well, what is up, Carolina Nation? This is John Felipe of the Carolina Cast, of course, the podcast of, by, and for the Carolinas, right here on IE Sports, your direct feed for all that is sports. And I'm reminding you to tune in Fridays at 7 p.m. Eastern for the latest in Carolina sports, whether it's the Panthers that keep on pounding, the fly natures of the Hornets, the storming Hurricanes, the battle of the Blues with Duke and UNC, the fight of the Clemson Tigers, or the amazing atmosphere of any Carolina college. I'm talking App State, I'm talking ECU. I've got you covered. Once again, tune in for the Carolina Cast with me, John Felipe, Fridays at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, right here on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports.
All right. Welcome to AZ Sports Daily. I'm your host, Kiernan Daly, bringing the heat to Arizona sports. There's no discrimination here. We're going to talk about every sports team, professional and college. The show is all about you, the listener. I'm here to entertain you. Are you not entertained? Is this not why you are here? It's going to be fun, high energy. You may not agree with what I say. That's okay. Let me hear you. Let's talk about it. Join me every Wednesday, 8 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, right here on AZ Sports Daily. That's AZ Sports, Daly, and at IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports.
What's up, sports fans? You're listening to IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports. I'm your favorite West Coast Wisconsinite, Bernie Bango, and if you're a cheesehead, come listen to my show, Big Cheese Sports, where we road trip around America's Dairyland, previewing, reviewing, predicting, debating, and digging into all that is Wisconsin sports at the college and pro levels. Join me on IE Sports Radio, Sundays at 1 p.m. Central Standard. Bernie out.
What up, Boston sports fans? This is Mikey Two Guns here, your host of Our Bleepin' City, airing every Wednesday night from 7 to 8 p.m. right here on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports. Please join me. We'll talk everything Boston sports, all the local teams, college teams. I'm even down to talk MMA, boxing, whatever you guys want. So join me every Wednesday night, 7 to 8 p.m. Chime in with your questions on the chat, tweet the show. We'll even have call-ins. I can't wait to hear from you guys. This is going to be a lot of fun. So once again, it's Our Bleepin' City. I am your host, Mikey Two Guns, every Wednesday night from 7 to 8 p.m. right here on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports. See you soon, people.
Hello, everyone. My name is Daryl Kinsey Jr., and I'm welcoming you to take another lap with the fastest show on IE Sports Radio. Yes, this is the Extra Mile with me and my co-hosts Christopher Lehman and Michael Ward. We talk everything racing from NASCAR to IndyCar to Formula One to limited hydroplanes, endurance racing, the NHRA, and more. So come join us for an hour of great racing talk and a lot of fun as well on the Extra Mile, Thursdays at 8 p.m. only on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports.
Hey sports fans, do you like wine? Well, we've got the show for you. This is Let's Whine About Sports, a show where we talk about wine and sports simultaneously. From the classic Cabernet Sauvignon all the way down to the grapes that you've never even heard of before. Oh yeah, we cover it all. And we'll talk about a little bit of sports as well. Football, hockey, collegiate, women's sports, it doesn't matter. We're going to talk about it all, and we're going to whine about it all. So join me Monday at 8 p.m. on IU Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports.
And welcome back to the 200th episode of Set Point. Without any further delay, let's get on into our first guest. But first, definitely do check out all of our amazing shows. We have lots of shows dedicated to shows from football to Chicago sports to Carolina sports to Arizona sports. The list goes on and on. But with that being said, let's get back on into Set Point. My first guest is the former head coach for Mira Costa High School's boys volleyball team, where he won a CIF Southern Section Championship and a CIF SoCal Regional Championship. And he is also a current AVP beach volleyball player, and is just a very down-to-earth guy. Like, if you met this guy, you would definitely want to be his best friend. He's everybody's best friend. Ladies and gentlemen, the one, the only, Mr. Avery Drost! How you doing, Avery?
Teran, I'm so good and way better after that introduction, man. It's so nice to you, all those things you said, and I think everybody feels the same way about you when they meet you, man. So I'm doing really good, and I'm so honored to be a part of the 200th episode of your podcast. When did you record the first episode?
September 30th, 2019, and I remember
Wow.
I remember that day perfectly. It was when I was still in college at Long Beach State, and I still remember, and yeah, I was very nervous for the most part, and I kind of didn't know if I was going to be taking off. Like, if you had asked my 2019 self if I was going to really take off with a volleyball podcast of all things, I don't know if my 2019 self would have believed you, but I just can't believe where I'm at right now with Set Point. It's just too surreal. Having you and many others on as past guests, it's just really amazing. So,
well, that's such a cool story, and yeah, I think everybody's impressed with what you've done, and you just the kind of person that you are in volleyball. So I'm honored that you had me on, and it's good to talk to you, man. It was good to see you in Huntington a few weeks ago. Mm-hmm. That was fun to run into you down there.
Absolutely. It was great to see you as well. And without any further delay, let's get on into the volleyball action. But first and foremost, just a little disclaimer. These are the thoughts and opinions of myself, Teran Rodriguez, and Avery Drost, and not the thoughts and opinions of the AVP and IE Sports Radio or any second or third party organizations. Also, there might be a little bit of Mira Costa, Newport Harbor chatter. And I am a Newport Harbor grad, so I promise you all I won't talk too much about Newport Harbor all that much.
It's totally okay. It's totally okay. I mean, I have mad respect for Newport Harbor and you as a Newport Harbor grad, so no stress.
Thanks, Avery. But the floor is all yours, Avery. I've rambled on enough. Tell me, let the people know who you are, what you do, and how you got into volleyball.
Okay, well, the volleyball story, I think, is everyone has a good volleyball story. I mean, I like to share mine too. For anyone you listeners that haven't met or don't know me, I am getting into my advanced years of a long career of playing on the AVP tour. I played my first AVP qualifier event in 2009 when I was a kid, just pretty quickly out of college, and kind of broke through in earnest in like 2011, and I've been playing on the AVP tour with USA Volleyball, and got some great opportunities to travel around the world and play, and then play really consistently at home in the pro tours since then. So I've been really blessed that I've had that long of a run, and I'm still very much in love with it, and equally blessed that I get to keep doing it. I love volleyball a lot. I wasn't a volleyball kid from the very beginning. When I was a little guy, I played baseball first, and I was an okay baseball athlete, but I loved the game, but I wasn't a super standout in any way. I was kind of like decently well-rounded athletic, but I never touched a volleyball really at all till the very end of high school. And I had the opportunity to play, kind of got invited to play some indoor volleyball. I was a junior in high school, growing up in Redlands, California, which is Inland Empire, kind of down at the bottom of the mountain from where Big Bear is and out towards San Bernardino and Riverside. And there was a boys volleyball team at my high school, but it was, wasn't a really advanced program, and it wasn't a sport that had a whole lot of interest for boys. I mean, even just a few hours inland, right, from the coast. But totally fell in love with the game as soon as I got to play. I just thought it was so much fun. And I was starting to grow a little bit. I'm 6'4", and I was starting to get to be a little bit of a tall kid in high school. And I just thought, wow, I love this game. And then the way it worked out is I got to go to school at a place called Westmont College in Santa Barbara, which NAIA school, and was a perfect fit for me. It's a smaller school. I kind of had wanted to go somewhere that was a smaller school that just appealed to the kind of culture I wanted to be in, Christian school, and that was important to me too. But I was also going to get an opportunity to maybe play baseball and volleyball at Westmont, which was something that seemed so cool to me. So I went for that, and then I guess to chop the story short, it was, I got there, and when my plate was so full, realized I had to make a choice. It was kind of an easy choice for me at that point because I was so in love with volleyball that I started playing for the volleyball team at NAIA school at Westmont. I was totally raw, kind of athletic, but had so much to learn. I mean, I wasn't a good player. I was just learning all the ropes, and I had, fortunately, some really good leaders and teammates around my team at that time that mentored me and pushed me and helped me grow in the game. And then also just kind of God's grace, right? Some of these guys were really into beach volleyball, and right down the street from Westmont College is East Beach in Santa Barbara, which was and is, one of the better beach volleyball scenes in California, anywhere, with a lot of historic, great players coming off that beach. And so I would go down and play beach volleyball every spare minute I had, every minute. I just loved to play the game. And there was, older guys that were schooling me, just beating me up. My game was so raw. And then my teammates who were a little more advanced were beating up on me as well. And I was losing, but I was kind of figuring it out and just still really in love with it. And I guess fast forward to the end of college, I graduated, and I had in mind to pursue law. My whole game plan was to go to law school, what I had studied for, pre-law in school. And I had a job working for an attorney in Santa Barbara. I worked for him as an intern, and then when I graduated, I got a job and kind of doing paralegal work for an attorney. And I was not enjoying the job very much. I was kind of having some moral, ethical dilemmas with the guy I was working for. He wasn't doing things the right way, I thought, a lot of the time, and I just was getting a bad taste in my mouth for that whole profession. Meanwhile, all I wanted to do was play beach volleyball. I was just in love with it, and finally was starting to get a little bit better, and I was just so enamored with the game and trying to figure it out. By that time, I had played some tournaments and traveled around a little bit, just like CBVAs and open competitions, and I'd gone down to the South Bay a few times and played. And I got invited somewhere around that time to come down and participate in some of the youth national team stuff, youth beach development national team stuff, which was still really new. All those programs at that time were kind of just getting started. And so at that point it was the U23s, and I got invited to go down there and it went pretty well. I got invited back into the program, and just so at the same time I was really having struggles with this job I was doing. And, long story short, I ultimately decided I'm going to go down to the South Bay. I'm going to move from Santa Barbara to the South Bay. I'm going to, give up my job working for an attorney, at least put all that on hold for a while and see if I can't make it as a volleyball player for a while, which was like kind of a wild, ridiculous notion. And my family was like, they had their own things going on, and they thought, well, okay, you want to do that? That sounds crazy to us. We're, a little nervous about that, but so be it. And my wife, Allie, who I've been married to for 11 years now, we were dating at the time. She was about to go start nursing school in Denver, Colorado. And so she went that direction to start nursing school. I went to LA and started trying to pursue beach volleyball. So sorry, that's a long answer to the story, but that's how I ended up down in the South Bay area. I first lived in like Hawthorne, and then, now my wife and I live in North Redondo Beach. I've been at it for a long time now. Like I said, just God's grace, I ended up getting to play and kind of made it enough to be around this long and have worked in other ways around the margins to earn a living for my family. And now, shoot, man, yeah, we've been married 11 years. I've got 3 amazing little kids. We're loving our lives together, and I'm like so happy that volleyball has been a part of our lives together, because it's added so much like joy and flavor to our lives over all this time. So that is my volleyball story, man.
Absolutely amazing volleyball story right there. Just outstanding volleyball story. Like that probably could have been the episode right there, but we have a lot more to get into. But great, amazing stuff right there. Like I never even would have guessed any of that.
Oh man, well no, for sure. And you started off by saying like your 2019 self would never have imagined, where the podcast has gone. And, I think we can all look back on our lives sometimes and just think like how our younger selves would never have imagined things going the way they have for us to end up, where we are. And I feel that way all the time. It just does not make any sense that I would end up getting to play this long professionally, getting to be around so many great volleyball players. When I think about all the great volleyball players that I've just been around in my volleyball life now up to this point, like that would have been really, that's what would have been so insane to me, go back to 2008, college graduate Avery, looking at, these volleyball heroes that I had. And now that I've got to spend so much of my volleyball life, in community with those guys and girls. So it's like, it's crazy, man. That's how life takes you in those directions. And, I'm very grateful for it all. I know that it didn't have to work out, but it did.
So fast forwarding to 2018, you eventually got your coaching job at Mira Costa High School. What was it like meeting the legendary Michael Cook, and what was it like coaching in your first year as the high school coach?
Yeah, great question. So, it was 2018 when I started to coach the indoor team at Costa. Before that, I was helping the beach team at Costa. So that was my first connection to the program. I was coaching with the sand team that Mira Costa had, boys sand. And at that time, the previous head coach, a really great guy named Sean Shoptaw, stepped down after coaching for a while. They needed a new coach for the indoor. And the boosters for the beach team brought the idea to me. And I initially said, no, thank you. I couldn't imagine how I was going to be able to take on that responsibility at that time. We had my daughter Blake at that point. She was just little, not even 2. And then my son, I don't even know if he was on the way. I can't remember. He was born in 2018, but at the end of the year. So not really sure if he was even in the picture. Right. But I said, no, thank you. I was I just didn't see how I can handle it. Although I was honored. I was really honored that they reached out to me about that, because I know that the school, I knew of the program being one of the historically most significant volleyball programs. So next step was a friend of mine actually was hired for the job. They talked him into it, and he was hired for the job. A really awesome guy named Brian Cook, who played at Stanford and had some time on the beach playing on the AVP. I mean, one of like the best volleyball players I've probably known. If he wasn't dealing with so many injuries, he just ended up dealing with a ton of injuries that kind of shortened his career. But dude was just an amazing player. So he took the job right around that time. I mean, almost immediately after. I don't know if they were married at the time or if they were engaged or together. He's married to Kelsey Robinson, who's a great indoor player with the women's national team. And she took a contract to go play, I think it was in Turkey. And he decided he was going to go with her. So they would be together. And that all happened kind of right after they hired him, like a week later at Costa. So that happened. And then they came back to me. And they said, like, we really think, that you would be a great fit for this, and that this would be, life-giving to you and a joy for you and your family and the community. And I thought about it some more, and I just thought that this is such a special school and, like, a big challenge, and I would like to just take on a challenge like that and see how I can do. I'd been coaching club and really involved in indoor coaching for several years before, but it was a big jump for me. And yeah, you asked how I first met Cook. I think that's pretty funny because I was in an interview. It was like a panel interview with the principal of the school, a couple members, I think the superintendent, and maybe a couple other admins. I can't even recall who all it was. And then the athletic director, and then Mike Cook. And in the interview then, he was incredibly skeptical of me because I wasn't a Costa guy. I wasn't born and raised in the South Bay. I was an outsider in that sense. I didn't have any formal ties to Costa. And Cooker just was giving me like the major side eye, just not sold on me at all. And I came through the interview process, and they hired me on, but then I definitely felt like most of that first year was like trying to convince Cooker that I was not a waste of space, and that I was knowledgeable enough to run the enterprise. And then like slowly over time, our relationship got really cool. But it's really funny when I first met him that he 100% didn't buy into this guy he'd never heard of from Redlands, who didn't go to Costa. He was not impressed immediately with that. So we had to work our way towards having like that mutual respect. But thank you God, like over time we ended up being pretty good friends, and I'm pretty thankful that I know the man.
Mm-hmm. And I think that might have been the most wisest decision that that all that panel decided to make. As obviously the first year was a little bit of a tough. Yeah, no problem. The first year was a little bit of a tough year. You lost in the quarterfinals to South Torrance, but the second year, your sophomore year, was a better year. You made the CIF SoCal Regional and CIF Southern Section Finals, but you lost to a team by the name of, Newport Harbor. You lost to them not once, not twice, not 3 times, but 4 times that year. Obviously, the Newport Harbor Mira Costa rivalry runs deep, but tell me, how frustrating and how tough was it to lose to Newport Harbor, especially since that 4th time you weren't there? Because if I recall correctly, you were at an AVP tournament.
Yeah, I think so. No, what happened that year? So I was there in the end for all 4 games.
Oh, never mind. I'm sorry.
Oh no, it's okay. But I barely made one of them. Is what it was. So yeah, that year was unbelievable, right? It was I think we lost 5 games that year, and 4 of them were to Newport. And we lost in the Best of the West tournament, right? And then we had a season match that year. That was during the process of the new. My first year in 2018, the old Mira Costa gym was still there. Mm-hmm. Then they tore that thing down and they started the building project of the new gym that they're in today. And so during that time, we were playing at Manhattan Beach Middle School. And so we had this knockdown, drag-out fight, 5-setter at the middle school. I remember Tony Cirelli, standing up, yelling at me while I was coaching, and just like hilarious stuff like that in this crazy 5-setter at the middle school where Newport won. And then, of course, we went on to meet in the CIF final. And then in the state regional final, I came back. I got off a plane and hustled straight from the airport and made it to Harbor to just barely be there in time for that regional finals matchup. I missed a game. I missed the semifinal round of that run when we upset Pacific Palisades, and they had that great team up there. And our assistant coach Greg, who's the man, and actually the man who's taking over the job at Costa, he handled it, and we went up to Palisades and won that game. And that was that Palisades team with the Partain brothers and Akil Tongatur, Justin Howard, a really awesome team that we got through to get to go play Harbor one more time in the regional final. And we lost down there as well. So, the playing Harbor has been a theme for, all the time that I had to coach. And that 2019 team was I think they were undefeated, right? That was Joe Carlos and
they lost one match to Corona Del Mar, but they were
did.
pretty undefeated.
They did. Okay. Well, I know you guys hate that, but they had such a great team, and I remember feeling that we weren't falling short in terms of, obviously we set our goals to win those games, but I thought we played close to our ability and got beat by a better team, during that run, because that team was so excellent. I just thought Dane Chalmers and Joe Setting, and just it was a really great team. So they deserved it. And, but that was a much better year. My first year coaching was so difficult, just getting my feet under me and learning how to be a high school head coach, and then taking over a team that had a bunch of, key seniors coming into their senior year that were, their world was kind of turned upside down when they all of a sudden had a new coach walking in, even though I knew all the boys from the beach team. So it was just a lot. And that season was a growth process, and 19 went so much better. We had great guys on the squad. They really battled, but Harbor was the best team. They definitely were. They deserved it.
Mm-hmm. I as a Sailor fan and alum definitely appreciate you saying that. So 2020 was a little bit of a heartbreaking year, as everything did get canceled because of COVID-19. But then we fast forward to 2021, where your team was standing on top of the mountain, having won the CIF Southern Section Division I Championship and the SoCal Regional Championship. Tell me, what was the turning point of the season, considering there were no tournaments and it was basically a condensed season for you all?
I always I try to do this whenever there's an opportunity, kind of shout out that 2020 team, because one of the saddest things about that whole situation, everything about that COVID situation was devastating, but that 2020 team that we had was so awesome. It was such a great group of guys, so many wonderful seniors on that team. Jack Walmer, Dane Johnson, Sam Collins, Jack Hopkins. There's so many guys that were Ethan Young. There's so many guys that were peaking at that moment. And 2020 season, they got to play a couple games, and they got to play the Best of the West tournament did happen in 2020. And then like the world shut down about a week later, but the team won the Best of the West championship in 2020. And you'll enjoy this, but they had like a great match against CDM in the final, and they won big in the final against CDM, who had a great team that year. And that team was so special. I actually still have the bracket from that Best of the West tournament. It's like pinned up in my garage, and I have great memories of that particular group of guys. And I was so sorry for them that they didn't get to have their senior season because they were so special. So yeah, shout out to those guys. And then 2021 came along, and it was a whole bunch of guys who were new first-year starters who filled in for those guys that kind of graduated during COVID times. 2021, we've got our new gym. It's finally completed. Took 2 years to build, but we're in that new gym. And that team was, the heart and soul of that team was a kid named Ben Court, who led that team with everything he had. And there were a whole bunch of other great pieces on it too. All seniors for the most part, but a lot of guys who only started as seniors. And they won a championship. They won a CIF championship. And we played Newport in the final of that. And then, and fortunately at our place, right. And then, got to play, Loyola in the regional final also at our place. And the guys won those championships, and those memories are so priceless to me. I was so proud of them and that accomplishment for our area. I've become, I'm not from here, but I've become very much a South Bay guy. I really love this community. I'm very attached to it. And so I was so happy that we delivered a championship to the South Bay, and I loved those boys. I was so proud of the way they did their thing. And, that was like just a super special year. I loved it. And, memories on memories on memories of that I'll take with me the rest of my life.
And I'll be 100% honest, you all definitely deserve to win that. And if you're Newport Harbor and you're a Newport Harbor fan, there's no other team you'd rather lose to, just because Newport Harbor and Mira Costa have some of the best history in terms of boys volleyball, such as the following year, where unfortunately they kind of got a little revenge on y'all and beat you in the semifinals. But I want to jump to one match before then, as you all reverse swept Mater Dei on the road in the quarterfinals. Yeah. So I do want to know, what makes Mira Costa have that comeback grit when they're down 0-2? Because if you remember back in 2008, for all you high school boys volleyball fans in SoCal, Newport Harbor was up 2-0 in the CIF Southern Section Division I final, and then got reverse swept by Mira Costa. So I need to know, what makes Mira Costa have that grit when down 0-2?
Well, it's really great of you to say. I think that there have been some really gritty teams at Costa over the years, and I think that there's like a really amazing thing about high school volleyball. I mean, high school, the high school level in a best of 5 is so interesting, because when we're talking about high school age players, momentum is kind of, I think, like kind of the younger the age group you're dealing with, the bigger momentum is. Because as guys are maturing in their games, especially like high school boys are starting to be able to play at like a really high physical level, but they're still maturing in their control and their mental focus for something as long as a 5-set match, right? And there's like in the game of volleyball, there's these massive momentum swings, and the fact that you play 5 sets and like, when the third set starts, the score is 0-0, and so there is a fresh start, and then you get that chance to maybe finally start to play better. A couple balls bounce your way, the crowd gets a little involved. Like, you just never know. There's something that flips, and then having been reverse swept, and particularly that 2021 team, that 2022 team, that particular team had been reverse swept twice early in the season. We were reverse swept by Mater Dei at home early in the season, and then we were reversed by Santa Barbara at home early in that season. And I think everyone would agree that if you look at all the teams that I had in the run, that 2022 team was probably the team that was like the most of an underdog. Like we were, as far as size, it was by far the smallest team we had. We graduated such a powerhouse of a squad the year before. Our starters were young all across the board, aside from a couple of seniors who were like really tough kids but undersized. Victor Loyola is a sophomore. Nick Bakos was playing OH2, and he's a libero converted to outside. We got a couple middles playing that were like 6'2" and 6'1". And so it was like just a really like underdog kind of team, and they took some serious lumps. Like we lost more games that year than any other year that I coached. We really had to figure some stuff out. So that moment was such a huge breakthrough moment for us because they just stayed tough and sort of stayed with it and caught fire and won that match in 5. And in doing so, made another CIF semi, and that was huge. That just like that team accomplished that, I think, with what they had. And then Newport, when we played that year, was much farther along. They were a significantly better team, and the guys battled, but Newport was really strong that year, and a lot of those pieces that when those guys won that year, a lot of those pieces were back this past year that we just concluded to win again. So yeah, I mean that was that team, and but that was another just a classically great Newport team as well that did a great job, and they did it again the next year.
Yes, and I was going to get into 2023, but obviously, the so-called semifinals, you all took a tough loss to Newport Harbor. But I actually want your opinion. What do you think of the whole new CIF Southern Section Division I format and how it's pool play? Because obviously it was first introduced on the girls' side, but then it was kind of the inaugural year on the boys' side as well.
Yeah, that's right. Well, there's one thing I like about it a lot, and that is that I like that when you get into that pool play setting, the home and aways are just based on seeding, and I think that is a lot more fair and a much better system than the coin flip. It's so funny when I got started in it, I it's always just been so strange to me that in the past system, a coin flip can determine something as important as a home and away, depending on how things go in the old format. So we were the beneficiaries of a couple of good coin flips, and then we got hurt by a couple unfortunate coin flips. And I'm really glad that the pool play system just means that you're playing home and away based on seed. I think that is really good and fair, the fairest way to do it. And I'm not against pool play as a format to get more games in, but I do think that small of a Division I playoff is pretty cutthroat, and I think that's going to have to get looked at more carefully as things go forward because, I mean, particularly on the girls' side, there are so many really good teams. There's so many more than 8 really good teams. I think there's twice as many teams that are really, really good probably on the girls' side. And then on the boys' side too, I mean, I think you're seeing it these last few years. Like there's just more programs that are really good. I think that there's a lot of teams that are going to be heartbroken to be left out of D1 when they're as good as they are. And so I don't know. I think that there's going to have to be some careful thought into how long that stays just an 8-team Division I playoff, because there's a lot, there's more and more good teams every year. And there should be. We're seeing boys volleyball grow. And I think that maybe getting a few more teams into D1, and I guess like schools that are on the rise, they're maybe not the traditional powerhouses, but they're on the rise and boys volleyball is growing. It might be good to get more teams into D1 and let them compete for a chance. I don't know. I know that conversation will happen, but pool play in general as a concept, like I was okay with that because of the great matchups that it creates and the fact that they're just like, hey, you got to perform in the regular season and try to earn a good seed so that you can have those home matches. I think that's good too. It's not just up to a coin flip.
I totally agree, and honestly, I think it's eventually going to get like modified and eventually going to be like this was probably the first test run, the first beta test, but eventually it's going to get better and better. It's like fine wine; it ages perfectly as years go by.
Yeah, for sure, dude. That's how it has to be, and I think they'll learn. I mean, it wasn't like a disaster by any means. I thought there were some really cool parts of it, and they'll keep getting it better.
Right. Now, before we put a bow on your coaching career, who are some of your favorite players that you've coached at Mira Costa?
Oh, man, it's a great question. I coached so many boys at Costa that I will love and appreciate for a long time. Oh, gosh. This gets hard because I don't, want to leave anybody out. Like there's so many guys. I have probably had some of the most special relationships with, I had a really special relationship with Jack Walmer, who graduated that 2020 year, which was tough, but I, just knowing him since he was a really young kid and getting to go through his time and coach him was really special for me. I mentioned Ben Court. Ben Court was, I think, one of the most special players anyone could ever coach because of his unbelievable will to compete, get better, lead his team. I mean, nobody could ever want it more than him, and he was the most dynamic player and then the most dynamic leader at the same time. And it's just such a gift when you have a player like that leading your team. So really such a special one. I mentioned guys like Dane Johnson, two Dane Johnsons. We had Dane Johnson in 2018, graduated, an outside hitter who I loved, and a guy named Dane Johnson who graduated in 2020 in middle, who I just really loved coaching and his leadership. And, oh, man, I had special relationships. Loved watching Sam Collins and Jack Hopkins play. I think I mentioned Ethan Young. Guys like Austin Stewart, Austin Wills. Guys like Troy McDonald. Will Bond and Locke Ferris, Thomas Kretschmer is such a special guy. And then, this team that is wrapping it up right now, I had such a special time with Jason Walmer, Jack's brother, who I love and have been around since he's a little guy, and watching him do his thing, and guys like Murphy Glasgow. I kind of mentioned Mick earlier, Mick Bakos. I kind of got to stop. There's so many guys, and forgive me, boys, if I didn't mention, because there's so many guys I love from the team that I will love for a long time. I could name just about every name, dude. So I'm realizing one one name that I haven't mentioned at all yet that like really, really needs to be brought up. I mentioned that my great friend Greg Snyder is going to take over as head coach at Costa, and he coached with me all these years that I coached, and we became incredibly close friends, and I am so happy for him that he's going to take over. But somebody I didn't mention is my really dear friend Brad Lawson, who I love. And Brad, when I started in 2018, that was the guy that I called to ask come assist with me, was Brad Lawson. And if you know anything about Brad was like, Brad's from Hawaii. He played Iolani School in Hawaii from Oahu, and he was like a elite high school player for that program. And then he went to Stanford, where I think Brad had one of the best college volleyball careers in the history of the game. I mean, he was an unbelievable player. I think he had I would say it has to be the best individual performance in a NCAA final in history. I'm kind of blanking on the year now. I think it was maybe 2011, but Brad was OH1 on the Stanford team that won the championship that year, and in the final against USC, he, I believe, hit 24 for 25, and the only ball. He 24 for 25 with one error, and the error was a ball that he killed on the bic, but he foot faulted on the bic. Otherwise, it's a perfect 25 for 25. And even as it was, he was 24 for 25 with one error. Like, I don't think there's another performance that is even close to that. So that was Brad, the college player, and then he's my really good friend, and he was willing to come and coach with me at Costa. And we coached together the first 2+ years. In 2020, he and his wife, Amanda, moved out to Texas, where Amanda grew up, and kind of right before COVID shut the world down. They sort of like felt that coming, and they left California to go to Texas. And, but we coached together for those first couple of years, and like all the groundwork for everything we did was like really established with Brad as the assistant. And that the first year in 2018, Greg, joined us partway through, and I kind of got to know him. He was coaching the freshman team, and then I got to know him and realized he was just such a invaluable, amazing guy to have around the program, and we became great friends. And Brad and I wanted him to come and help us on the varsity team, and he was up for it. So, like, so thankful that worked out. But anyway, dude, I just had to talk about my coaching run. Brad was a huge part of that. So, forget the question. Well, you said like players, standout players. Yeah, mentioned some names, but like, God, there's so many more. Like, I can't even keep. It's not fair. Like, I could just start naming everyone who played for me and how much they mean to me.
Mm-hmm. And that pretty much will put a bow on the questions that I have for your coaching career. I actually do want to propose a toast for an amazing coaching career that you had, as I'm actually going to toast via the Waiakea water bottle that you gave to me at the AVP tournament, and I have not opened it yet. So I'm actually going to
held on.
Yes, for this occasion. So I'm going to actually open it. So let's open up the bottle.
A toast.
Yes.
Thanks.
Cheers. Cheers to Avery.
Cheers to you, brother. Thanks for
all right.
Thanks for that. And that's cool. You held on to the water bottle. That's a good move.
Thanks.
Yeah, it was an amazing time. I'm really grateful for the time I had to do that, to coach at Costa.
Mm-hmm. Now let's take a sip of this water bottle to see what it tastes like.
Tastes like the natural springs bursting forth from below the volcanoes of Hawaii, huh?
Oh yeah, I definitely tasted it. Absolutely. Mahalo for the water. All right. So a few
Shoot,
more
brother.
questions, and then I'll let you go for the night. So
All right, great.
one thing I like about you, Avery, is that you have been able to rise above adversity, not just on the court when it comes to volleyball, but off the court, as you had a couple of close friends pass away. In 2019, your good friend Eric Zahn, if I'm pronouncing that correctly, he passed away. And then 2020,
right.
your father passed away in June.
Yeah.
Tell me, how are you able to rise above those tragic events, and how are you able to basically just have the strength to just keep going and just live your life?
Oh, man. Well, yeah, losing Eric in 2019 was a really heartbreaking thing for the whole volleyball community, the beach volleyball community. Really loved and appreciated the way Eric Zahn lived his life. He was such a dynamic personality, so entertaining, so athletic, and like such a gifted player. And he was my buddy. And, you know, we were playing together on the AVP that year. And so, you know, for like your listeners who don't know that whole story, Eric was probably the last guy that you would ever imagine battling some darkness, you know, like some mental darkness. He was so lively, like I said, and such a happy guy on the surface. But I think for all of that year and going back even a little bit further, he was, you know, he kind of uncovered that he was battling like a darkness and kind of a fascination with the end of his own life, which is a strange way to describe it, but that's kind of how it was. People who were even closer to him than I was at that time, like his girlfriend and his parents, were realizing that he just was like leaning into an obsession with dying. And that is a strange thing and a horrible mental illness, right? Because that wasn't really who he was in his full self, but there was like a sickness that was getting at him from the inside. And so, yeah, in 2019, Eric took his own life, and I got this phone call from his mom, you know, in tears, called me to tell me that Eric had died and that he had taken his life. And like up to that moment, like the most devastating and hurtful thing I had probably ever experienced, because I was playing with him at the time and I was right near him a lot of that time, and I just like really did not pick up on what was going on. And I say that now and I still can hardly believe it, because I sort of think of myself as being pretty perceptive, but I did not know. I really would not have ever guessed that Eric was going through that, because he seemed like he was really enjoying his life. And I was, you know, we're so different, because he likes to live like really off the cuff, and like just seemed like he had like endless joy, just like living kind of wild and free. And we were different in the sense that, you know, I already had my family at that time, and I don't know, I think I'm a little bit more like measured, I guess, but like, dang, he seemed like he was living and really happy, but he was struggling. And when he passed away, I felt like tremendous guilt for not knowing what was going on and being there more closely to him to try and help. I mean, that hurt me more than I could even explain. I mean, just like nights where I was just uncontrollably crying, you know, telling my wife how I had failed my friend. It was horrible, such a hard feeling. And then like over time, I came to really understand, you know, intellectually at least, you know, this is not my fault, but I felt that pain for a long time. And then like that slowly gave way to just missing one of the coolest friends I ever had, like just somebody I loved very much. And I just miss him. And he was 25 years old, and he just should have had so much more of a life. in front of him. But like I'll like touch on my dad, I guess, and what happened there, and then I guess answer your question about like how we move on from those type of things. I mean, so my dad was somebody I loved so much. I mean, no words for how much I love my dad. And my dad lived a really tough life where he had a tough childhood, like very, very disadvantaged, single mom, didn't have a lot of opportunity, really did the very best he could, and overcame a lot of tough stuff to have a family, have 4 kids. I'm the oldest of those 4, and really like provide for us a much better family than we probably you could ever hardly expect from a guy who came out of the situation my dad came out of. And he gave everything he had, but he was, for most of his life, for a lot of his life, he was battling some substance abuse stuff. He was pretty severe alcoholic towards the latter part of his life, and then that there got to be some addictions with some like prescription medications and things like that, and so that together led him to pass away, like sudden heart failure when he was under the influence of some stuff, and he had a lot of physical pain that he tried to medicate with that, and we lost my dad kind of suddenly in 2020 after a tough life. Dad fought like through a pretty tough life, and then he passed away. And he was like, he wasn't perfect, but I loved him like really dearly. He was a great father to me, taught me so many things, and was like very, very loving to me. Even though his life was torn apart with a lot of pain that was connected to these addictions, like he was a loving and good man to me and my family. So I really hurt to lose my dad. And I like to share all this, bro, and I know I'm probably going beyond your scope of your question, but like, if you know me, there's nothing that's more essential part of me than my faith in Christ, and my Christian faith is like the root of my whole life, and that is how I can manage, the loss of a friend like Eric, and then like my dad, because both cases, those guys knew Jesus. They were, Eric was finding his way into that, and there's a lot he didn't understand, but he knew grace in that sense. And my dad in the same way, was like, his walk wasn't always straight by any means, but he definitely knew the Lord and his need for a Savior, and was very, very aware of that brokenness in him. And so like, dude, I'm just so glad that their death isn't the end, and that we'll be together again, and that we have that to look forward to, and that the time that we had doesn't just disappear and go into nowhere, but that it's like there's an eternity for us to know each other and keep going. So sorry to like go way off on that, but that's the only way I can answer that question, because otherwise I'd be totally lying about anything else. Like that's how we've handled the death of those guys who I love so much. And I mean, through that we live today, and we have our hope for tomorrow. And yeah, that's how that is.
Avery, first of all, I just want to say that is an incredible like story that you all shared, and that you shared, and may those two rest in everlasting peace. And first and second of all,
thanks, brother.
Honestly, what you said is absolutely the truth, and we're not going to give you any flack for that. And I'm fairly certain my boss, Larry B., who was in the chat room early on, he's not going to give you or I any flack about that. So So I actually do want to ask you one more question before I let you go and bring on my second guest. Okay. I actually want to ask about your friendship with Andrew Mabry. So I feel you two are basically the two sides of the same coin. So tell me, what can you say about your friendship with Andrew Mabry and your relationship with Andrew Mabry?
Yeah. Oh, dude, I'm gonna something I'm gonna miss is being around him more in the coaching world. I have a ton of respect for Andrew. I think one of the sweetest moments, when we lost down there in Newport. I don't even have to tell you what the environment's like when you go down and play a road game against Newport. I mean, you're getting grilled by the gnarliest student section that you find anywhere, and it's just a battle of a game. And we came up short, and it hurts. And then shaking hands with Andrew towards the end, and these two cute little girls come walking up, and I realized oh, those are Andrew's two kids. I said, oh, these are yours, and they're so sweet, and his wife was there with their little girls, and I could just see how much they love their dad, and it's a wonderful thing. I mean, that shows you everything you need to know about what Andrew's about, and I could see his family, and yeah, I have little kids that are right around the same age as his, I think. So I think it's so admirable that he takes on the challenge of coaching both the girls and the boys. Dude, that is so much work and so much stress to bear. There's very few people who can really understand the stress of coaching a high school team and everything that comes with that. And he handles the girls and the boys side, and he does it with a lot of toughness and fairness and strength, and obviously does a really good job of instilling high quality volleyball into his players. So mad respect for Andrew Mabry. I think he's on his way to a lot more winning years, and yeah, mad respect for him. So I'll hopefully run into him in life in general in other ways, but yeah, I'll kind of miss running into him in the high school world.
And I will miss seeing you on a coaching basis, but I'll be seeing you on the AVP level. But that is my interview with Avery Drost.
That's true.
Avery,
we'll see each other on the beach.
Yes. Avery, if you can, do hold on so I can give you a proper goodbye. But that is my interview with Avery Drost. Avery, let these people know where you could be found on social media.
Oh, yeah, man. I mean, best for me is Instagram, and it's just at Avery Drost. No spaces, no dots or anything. Just at Avery Drost on Insta. That's the social I use the most, and love to be in touch with anyone who is a fan of the podcast.
Excellent. Well, thank you for joining, Avery. I really do appreciate it. Let's take ourselves a commercial break. When we get back, I'll be bringing on Mark Rosen, the former Michigan women's volleyball coach and current Southern Exposure assistant coach. So keep it locked here.
Nice.
You're listening to Set Point here on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that sports. We'll be right back after this.
Hey there, sports fans. Are you looking for a sports show that maybe isn't 100% about sports?
Then you might want to check out the Sports Couple Perspectives right here on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports.
Most sports shows cover only scores and stats, and while we're not opposed to that, we dig a little deeper into sports issues and some of the hottest topics in athletics.
In addition to sports, we take a journey through my neck of the woods, pop culture, with movie reviews of both sports and non-sports films.
Speaking of pop culture, make sure to participate in our game nights, where we quiz each other on our specialties, and you, the listeners, can win IE Sports Radio apparel.
We always have a great time learning more about each other's worlds, one show at a time.
So join us each week on the Sports Couple Perspectives, right here on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports.
What's good, everyone? It's Drosky, the host of Heart of Texas Sports on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports. On this station, we cover everything in the Dallas-Fort Worth, Texas area. From where we cover the Dallas Cowboys, the Dallas Stars, Dallas Mavericks, Dallas Wings, Texas Rangers, TCU, SMU, we cover it all right here every Wednesdays from 9 to 10 p.m. Central Time. Make sure you stay live with me on the Heart of Texas Sports on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports.
Welcome back to the 200th episode of Set Point here on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that sports. Thank you to Avery Drost for being a guest on Set Point. But now let's get on into guest number 2. He is the assistant coach for the Florida Southern exposure of the NVA. He is the former Michigan volleyball coach, women's volleyball coach, where he had coached for 24 years, having won 468 matches, appearing in 19 NCAA tournaments, having won 66 matches against top 25 opponents, having a 2012 Final Four appearance, and being the all-time winningest coach in Michigan women's volleyball history. Ladies and gentlemen, the one, the only, Mr. Mark Rosen. How you doing, Mark?
I'm good, Teran. Thanks for the rousing introduction there. I appreciate it.
No problem, Mark. And thank you for bearing with me in terms of my going live time with you, and apologies for all the hiccups, but we got everything straightened out, and I'm glad to have you on. So, without any further delay, let's do this. So, Mark, how did you first hear about the NVA, and who got you into the NVA first of all?
Well, Tony Glesser, who is one of the owners of the Florida Southern Exposure, he was my video guy at Michigan. So, he'd been working on it the last couple of years. I know Pamela, the other co-owner who is at Florida, is now Lisa, my wife's assistant coach at Fresno State. So those two guys are good friends. I've known for a long time. And when I stepped back and was kind of in the coaching realm this year, and helping out and get involved in my absolutely fun. I helped him coach. I've gotten to know a little bit. He's a really good guy, and so it just turned out to be a cool way to keep my fingers in volleyball a little bit.
Okay, so yeah, you kind of cut out a little, but I did hear that Tony Glesner got you involved, and he, being the co-owner of the Florida Southern Exposure, got you involved into the NVA. But I did forget to ask you this big question. How did you first get into volleyball, and who got you into volleyball in general?
Yeah, as a player, I actually grew up as a hockey player up in Alaska, and I was dating a girl who was a volleyball player, and so there was a chance to try out for a boys team that was traveling to Canada for a tournament, and I thought, I'll try out. I'd played a little bit in volleyball class, and I think 11 guys tried out, and they took 10, so I assume I beat out one person to get on the team. And then just went from there. Just started playing a lot more. I ended up playing club volleyball at Oregon State for 2 years. Then went to Northridge and played on the men's team there for 3 years. And then, took off from there. So just something that I had a lot of passion for. Kind of got into it a little bit late, but, then just turned that into the coaching side of stuff.
Awesome. So at Michigan, you had an illustrious career. Like I said, you won 468 matches, which is a 61% win percentage. You had a 61% win percentage. And tell me, what was your favorite moments at Michigan?
I had a lot of favorite moments. It was a great run there, and we had some amazing student athletes come through the program. And beating Stanford to go to the Final Four was certainly that has to be right up there with on the list. Being at the Final Four with our team, I've been there a lot as a coach for the convention, but to take your team there and to be there as a participant was pretty awesome. So, those are some great moments. But, some of the best moments are when we had student athletes graduate or when we had student athletes get married. And, those moments in life that are probably as memorable as any match we ever won and certainly as important. And so I think it wasn't just the volleyball side of it that was really memorable. We had some great people come through our program at Michigan, and we're still connected with them. We found out today one of our alums just got a head coaching job, and we're super excited for her. And so, those are the days that really get me excited, even when we're out of the business. I'm not currently coaching college, but I'm still having those experiences with our former student athletes.
Awesome. Now, this might be a tricky question because I asked my previous guest this, and he kind of gave me a laundry list of an answer. But who were some of your favorite players and notable players that you coached at Michigan?
I couldn't start the list without Molly Toon first. And Molly Toon was a player that played on our Final Four team, and she tragically passed away a few years ago. And it really, it was really difficult for our program, but also for me personally, because Molly was just an exceptional person. And so, but I also think it brought our team, some of those players that played over those years, it brought everybody back together. So it's been really fun for us to be able to get together and honor Molly. So she's certainly up the list. Lexi Zimmerman, who was a 4-time All-American, amazing setter. But we had a lot of good setters over the years. So I hate to single anybody out, but they just my mind's just flooding with people. Aaron Moore, who was our first All-American, and also in our first recruiting class when we first got to Michigan, and she's still one of our dearest friends. And we spend as much time as we can around her. Our kids feel like she's their older sister. So there's just so many players. I hate to miss anybody. Jen Cross, who is currently the captain for the Canadian national team. She was on our Final Four team. She's injured right now, and they're trying to qualify for the Olympics, so it's a tough run for her. But she's just a special person. That I know I'm missing people when I say that, so I hate that. Because to me, and that's probably why your other guest had a tough time as I am, is, I could just sit here and go all day long with names because there's so many great players, but even more importantly, so many great people that have come through our program, and we just really value them in so many ways.
I totally get that feeling, and I know you don't want to miss one, so I'll just leave it at this.
It's kind of like trying to asking me which is my favorite kid, Brady or Cameron. I'm probably not going to be able to answer that. It's kind of the same way with the players.
Yeah, if anyone got left off of either list from Avery Drost or Mark Rosen, I deeply apologize, and you could all direct the hate mail toward me. Anyway, so Mark, Michigan did not, if I'm recalling this correctly, I want to say Michigan didn't start out in the Big Ten. If I'm incorrect, then just let me know. If that is not the case, then just let me know when Michigan...
No, they were an original Big Ten back in, 100 years ago or whatever, whenever the Big Ten started. They've been in the Big Ten ever since the very beginning.
Oh. Okay, so I'm probably thinking of Nebraska because they were in the Big 12.
Nebraska came in a few years ago, but no, Michigan's been in the Big Ten forever.
Okay, so yeah, that's my apologies. But going into this next question, the Big Ten is always a grind because you've got a lot of really good teams like UAll, Penn State, the team that begins with O and also has the word state in it, Michigan State. Oops, I probably shouldn't have said that one. But anyway, you get what I mean. Tell me, what's it like playing in the Big Ten every single night?
It's great. It is hard and it's a grind, but that's what we wanted. You wanted to play against the best teams every day, day in and day out, and so it was very exciting because you're preparing to play such great players and coach against such great coaches every single night. And You're not going to outcoach anybody. Your players aren't going to necessarily outplay anybody. It's going to be a dogfight. And the one thing I do have to say, because you kind of led into it, I actually don't have any beefs with Ohio State. My wife, Lisa, is in their Hall of Fame, and she was the Big Ten Player of the Year as a Buckeye. So we actually embraced the Buckeyes. We wanted to beat them just like anybody else in the Big Ten. But we don't have any hate for the Buckeyes.
Okay, I don't know if any Michigan fans are listening, and I don't want them to bring up the fact that I brought up Ohio State, but all in all, yeah, the Big Ten is always a grind. Did you happen to know Emily Eman of the Big Ten Network, and did you happen to have any contact with her?
I know her well, yeah.
Yeah, what were some of your favorite memories with her, if you had any, by chance?
I just think she was so good for the game. She brings so much energy and so much passion. She's got a great personality. Last year when we had the Big Ten Media Days, the first one ever, we were in Chicago and we were doing all these throughout the day, doing all these interviews, and we got to go into her studio. And it's cool to see. Here's this former student athlete from the Big Ten who now has her own studio that is designed just for her in the Big Ten Network headquarters. It was awesome. And I just looked at her. I go, you got to be pinching yourself every day. She goes, this is great. She's just so good for our sport because she brings an inside perspective because she's a former player, but she has a great on-air personality and just a great love for the game.
Awesome. And I totally agree with you. Emily Eman is definitely good for the game, not just in the Big Ten in terms of volleyball, but for all NCAA women's volleyball. All right, Mark. In your first year as head coach for Michigan, what were some of the things that you learned the most as a head coach, taking over for a university?
Yeah, I've been a head coach for 10 years before that, so it wasn't like head coaching was a new thing.
Ooh.
I think the biggest thing I saw in the Big Ten, though, was that the level of coaches were so good that every night that you better be prepared because the person on the other side of the bench is going to be prepared. And I just think that level of preparation, the level of scouting, was just so much higher in the Big Ten, and so it made it really fun. But in terms of head coaching, it was we had pretty good experience going into that, so it wasn't like it was a big transition of learning how to be a head coach. And actually, ironically, the first game we played was they had a poor year the year before. We certainly weren't ranked or weren't expected to do very well. And we played BYU, who was, I think, ranked 7th in the country at the time, was our first match at Michigan, and we ended up winning in 3. So it was a great, okay, this is fun. We're getting after it. So it was a nice splash into the kind of upper echelon of college volleyball.
Awesome. And who are some of your favorite coaches that you love to compete against?
I love to compete against anybody, so it doesn't matter. But I think there's certainly coaches that I just have a lot of respect for. Russ Rose has to be the top of the list, not just because he's won the number of national championships he's won. That certainly makes him a great coach. But to me, what made him a great person in our profession was that he was always available and still is always available to have a conversation about volleyball, have a conversation about coaching. He never makes you feel unworthy of that conversation. He's very humble. He's very, he's never condescending, which a lot of times when coaches get to that top level, they become very hey, I'm more important than everybody else. And there's a lot of people in our business that have kind of gotten that way at times. And Russ never did. Russ won 7 national championships in 4 in a row, and never once did I ever feel like he felt he was better than somebody else. He just had really good players, and that's what he would say. I have great players, but he's a great coach, and so I enjoyed coaching against him. But really, everybody in the Big Ten was fun. Dave Shondell is one of my favorites, and actually, Dave and I probably started out a little bit not on great terms when he came into the conference at Purdue. And as the years went on, we became, he's somebody I really like. I think he does a great job. So Jen at Ohio State is actually one of my favorites. She's great. She played at Ohio State after Lisa, so we knew her before, we coached against her. But she's just a really class person, a class act. So, I just, level, they've earned the right to be at that level, and they all have a great personality because of that, in my mind.
Awesome. And one last thing before we move on from the NCAA women's volleyball perspective, what will you miss about being Michigan's women's volleyball coach?
I think the interaction with the student athletes is certainly something that the daily interaction with them. That's what I liked about coaching the most anyway. And so that part I'll miss. I think game days are fun and exciting, and it's just very exhilarating. So that's different. But I'm not a giant fan of the direction the NCAA is going right now, and as most coaches in my era aren't. So there's a lot of things right now that we just see the direction of the NCAA and just go, it's just changing so rapidly, and a lot of those changes are necessary. Like it's unavoidable, but it also doesn't mean that I really would enjoy it. And so from that regard, I'm pretty I'm okay with being on the outside looking in a little bit right now. And it's really fun to watch Lisa taking over the program here at Fresno State, and her opportunity to be a head coach, which she definitely deserves and has earned. It's really fun to be a part of just watching that. So I'm excited this fall to watch your team.
Well, I, as well as the entire IE Sports Radio family, will be rooting for Lisa and the entire Fresno State program. All right, jumping back to the NVA, what's it like working with Kyle Steele, the head coach of the Florida Southern Exposure?
Yeah, I didn't know Kyle at all before this, and we got on a couple of Zoom calls to just talk ahead of time. I wasn't available for the first couple of events, so I watched them on video and kind of tried to get a feel for the players. But one thing that's very different about the league is it's different players every week. The teams change depending on who's available, who they bring. So that's what I found to be a little unique is, one match or two matches that I watched with NBA, they didn't have or with Southern Exposure, they didn't have a middle. They were playing other people in the middle position. And so it was unique that way. But as I've got to know Kyle, I really like him. I think he's a really good person. I think he cares a lot about the players. I think he knows the men's game clearly way better than I do. And so for me, I'm learning things from him and certainly trying to contribute some things to the program from my perspective. But the men's game is something I haven't been a part of since I played. And so it's been cool to kind of learn that. And he's a really, really, really good guy. We had a conversation today on the phone. I really like him.
Excellent stuff. So jumping back to last weekend, you all went 1-1, but it was a big win for you all yesterday against the Philadelphia Founders, as that first set, one of their players was just serving heat, but then you eventually overcame that 7-1 deficit and wound up winning that first set 25-23. Tell me, from your perspective, what did the team have to do in order to overcome that 7-1 deficit and take that first set?
Well, it's never fun to call a timeout at 6-1. It's not when you want to burn a timeout, but I thought we just came out really flat. We had 3 plays in a row that just were kind of not very good effort plays, were just miscommunication and balls dropping. And at this level, that's not something you expect to see. And so that was more what we talked about. It was like, hey, we just need to get dialed in here a little bit. And I think that the match on Friday probably got us a little bit in the crosshairs. And so I think everybody was a little freaked out by that. But I thought they settled down really well. And right, I don't know a lot of the guys' names on the other teams, but number 21, the guy you referenced, the jump serve, he was crushing it. I mean, his jump serve was nasty. And so I felt tough for our players because it's not like they were making mistakes. He just was unloading on it. But as the match went on, I thought we settled in really well ball control-wise. I thought that Diego did a really nice job of the offense. And that was more my focus during that match. Kyle asked me to just watch the offense and work with Diego more. And I thought he made really good choices. I think strategically we tried to be kind of establish the middle early on. We didn't do that well on Friday night, and so our pins were kind of out there just getting big blocks in front of them. So Diego did a great job. We had 2 new middles this week that we haven't had on the team before, so he had to learn them and figure them out a little bit. David from Brazil, he's a big guy, but they were just trying to find their rhythm together, and they finally figured it out. So it was. I think the big key to the match is just us getting our offense kind of dialed in, and then defensively, I thought we got better too. We weren't very good on Friday night, and certainly had a little slow start yesterday, but as we got going, I thought we played pretty good defense.
Yeah, and I will just say this about Friday's match against the Puerto Rico Pythons. That was actually the first match that the Pythons actually had their full team, and they obviously have the human cannon that is Jair Santiago, a.k.a. number 14. But despite the loss, what were some positives that you can take away from that Pythons loss that you added into that win over the Founders?
Well, I think one of the things I'm really impressed with our team is their resilience and their personality, where they learn from things. Like, they learned from their match. They talked about it afterwards in a very non-emotional but educational way. Like, hey, these are things we got to do better. These are things we need to do better the next time. And then they walked away and just got ready for the next game. And so I thought that was great. And you're right, Jair is his name. He's amazing. I mean, he came out the very first point of the match. He started in row 6, so he was back row, and he comes around and rips a back row ball and just buries it down the line. And it's like Kyle and I turned to each other and said, well, we know their game plan already, 1 point in, and they did it the rest of the night. Their setter did an outstanding job, but it was going to be him, and we just, we didn't do a very good job of stopping him, but I'm not sure that's our fault. I think that's more, when he gets going, he's tough to stop.
Yeah, and I totally agree. And I totally agree with all that you said right there. And that Pythons team also was fighting for its playoffs lives, which was something you all did as well, which currently the Southern Exposure find themselves in the last playoff spot in 4th place. How big was that win over the Founders going into Event 5, as you've got the Matadors and you've got the Ramblers?
Yeah, it was huge. I mean, we knew that it was a match that we had to win to stay in contention for the playoffs, and all the guys want to be in the championships, so it was key. But especially went down early that first set. I was really proud of the guys for how they kind of rebounded and kept their wits about them and just kind of rallied back in. And then it was by the end I thought we were playing some pretty good volleyball.
And then throughout the entire season, Exposure has been just super competitive against really good teams like the Ramblers, the Wild, the Stunners, the Stingers. They haven't really been decimated by any team this season. What can you say about the resiliency and the talent level that this team has?
Yeah, I think that there has been a little bit of up and down, and I think some of that's just is strictly lineup. I mean, first 2 events that I watched on video, we were missing some pieces in terms of just physical players. And then, with Diego coming in as a setter, I think he's doing a great job. The middle situation, we're still wondering who's going to be there from match to match. We thought we'd have Evan there this week, but he wasn't. But then, both Colin and Diddy did a really nice job. So I don't know what middles we'll have the next 2 events, but, I think we're starting to kind of settle into a lineup a little bit. Logan, started out on the right because we had to put Sam in the middle, but now Sam's, strong on the right side, and that's his home. That's where he should be playing. So once we've settled into that lineup, Logan's been really good on the left, and he's a fun kid to coach. He's just got a great personality, and he's got a lot of confidence. And so I think we've kind of starting to establish a bit more of a lineup, and so that's, I think, allowing us to hopefully be a little more consistent as we get into toward the end of the season.
I totally agree. And Event 5 is basically going to be the event. Heck, I could probably go as far as to say that Matador's Exposure could be the match of Event number 5. So one of your players, in my opinion, Sam Jackman, has probably been the straw that stirs the drink. What can you say about Sam Jackman and how much of a force he's been at the net this season?
Yeah, he's really physical. I mean, he's an impressive athlete just in terms of jump, and he's got a really live arm, very, very terminal. And I think, it's funny because I've only been around him for 2 events, so I don't know his history, but from talking to the player or coaches, players, he's somebody who's really maturing as a player and as a professional athlete. And so it's cool to see him kind of figuring those things out and, learning how to not just be this physical banger like a lot of college kids are, but actually be more a professional volleyball player, and so it's been cool to see that kind of develop. I think he still at times, he just needs to get up and use his physicality. There's times he thinks a little too much thinks, tries to kind of outsmart himself a little. And I think this weekend or yesterday, he did a really nice job of just letting that go and just going and being very physical. So it was cool. It's just been cool to see him develop as a player. I do agree with you. He's a guy that, if he's on, we can compete with anybody. And you might not be able to stop him. And Diego, I think, has been doing a really good job of kind of managing the distribution of our offense so that we don't maybe overuse him and then, bring his effectiveness down, because we have some other really good pieces. But, he's the guy that, we need to have him on to be in contention against the best teams, and I think he's learning how to do that.
Now, I actually want to take it back to event number 3, where you pulled off a thrilling 5-set win over the New Jersey Freedom. You were down 14-11, and then you reeled off 3 straight, and eventually wound up winning that set 18-16 in set 5. Tell me, how are you all able to dig deeper and have a much more bigger grit than the Jersey grit?
Yeah, to me, I don't ever compare with the other teams because I don't know, what's going on with them and where they're at in terms of that stuff. I just know our team. And again, that was the first event I was at, so I didn't know them very well. But I was very impressed with Diego down the run. I thought he did a great job of just giving the hitters great chances to be successful. Sam was huge. He had a couple of giant kills for us. And Zach, I thought, did a really nice job. Zach's a good pressure guy. Like, he loves to take big swings at big times. So, as we got going, just the momentum was going, and those guys, like I said, I don't think any of us, when we were down 14-11, thought, hey, we got this in the bag. But I love the fact that they didn't think they were done either. And that other team, I'm trying to remember what the name of the team was.
New Jersey Freedom.
Yeah, New Jersey. They'd had a tough 5-set loss the day before. And, so they were coming off of the whole weekend. They had 2 5-set losses that both, they had chances to win. So, they had a little bit more on the line maybe that was making it tougher for them. But I was just really proud of how our team played.
Yeah, it was probably one of my most memorable matches that I've seen in the NVA probably in a while. I know there's probably been other matches that I've seen that have probably maybe topped that, but in person, I think that one probably takes the cake. So, when it comes to new fans of the NVA, what advice can you probably give them?
Well, I think it's a new product. I think the league's trying to kind of figure out how they're going to be structured, whether it's you can see it in online streaming or you can see it live. Obviously, a lot of people, we don't have a lot of people coming to matches right now, but more and more people could come to matches. They're going to see some really good volleyball. That first in event 3 on the Friday night match, we had a good crowd. We had maybe 500 or so, and it was pretty loud. It was fun, but it sounds like that's one of the few matches that's had a decent crowd. So love for people to come out and see it live. But they didn't this past weekend, but in event 3 and I think in event 5 in the playoffs, they do a really nice job of the streaming. I mean, they have quite a professional production going on, and they do a really good job with it. So I don't know, because we were in a different venue this weekend, I'm not sure if that's why they didn't stream. But I think it's a good product to see. The guys are having fun. They play with a lot of energy and a lot of enthusiasm. There seems to be a lot of some rivalry stuff. The guys they all know each other. They're all kind of ribbing each other. So I think it's a fun product to watch. We hope people will either check it out live or check it out online.
Got it. And one more question, and then I will pretty much let you go. How does the NVA differ from NCAA, in your opinion?
Well, I think, to me, it's more of it's like the guys are treating it much more like a job, much more like a profession. And, I've been really impressed with how the guys just go about their business, whether it's on off days, taking care of themselves and getting ready, on game days. It's more like they're doing it themselves rather than the coaching staff. We don't do anything in warm-ups. Kyle just lets them do it themselves, which is great because there's no reason we need to be super involved in warm-ups if they're capable of knowing what they need and doing it. And so it's been really fun to watch kind of that professionalism of how they go about their business. But it's also they're older, they're more mature. That's and I think it's also a men's volleyball thing versus a women's volleyball thing, because they've kind of grown up in programs that maybe didn't have as much resources as some of the women's programs do, but so they're used to fending for themselves. But I really like that. I think it's a really cool, positive thing. And I thought about, when I finished playing college and was still playing for quite a few years after college, I would have loved to have something like this as an option. So I think it's a really cool thing, and I hope it continues to grow and prosper and give guys the opportunity to play after college.
Awesome. And one more question for real this time, then we'll jump to a commercial break. What have been some of your favorite memories with Tony Glesner?
Tony's one of my dearest friends. He's been a part of our summer camp for years. Then we brought him under our staff at Michigan. I was so glad that he got the opportunity at Stanford after we left Michigan. And I don't know if I can really pick, some of the things that are my favorite memories I just couldn't tell you, because it'd probably put him in a compromising situation. But he's just one of the funniest people I've been around. And what I really like about Tony, too, is he's a ultimate giver. Like, he's somebody who's going to always make every situation better. He's going to make people around him better. He's very selfless. It's never about Tony. It's always about other people. And so that's just what I really like about him. And, when Stanford called me, when Kevin called me about him, I was so excited that he was talking to him. And I'm like, Kevin, this guy will make the program better. He's just that kind of guy. And, I'm so glad that Kevin hired him, because, one, he's only a couple hours away from us, so we see him all the time now. But the other is he's a quality person who is going to he makes our game better by being in it. So I like that about him.
Excellent. And Tony, if you're listening, hope you're doing well with Stanford and safe travels back home. All right, but that is going to do it with my interview with Mark Rosen. Mark, please do stay on the line so I can give you a proper goodbye. We will take ourselves one last final break, and when I come back, I will be closing out the 200th episode of Set Point. Keep it locked here. You were listening to Set Point here on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that sports. We'll be right back after this.
Hey yo, what's up? It's your man Bishop, the voice of This Is KC Sports, the show where we go over the Chiefs, the Royals, KC Current, Sporting KC, MU, and oh yeah, if we got time, we'll even throw in some of that KU stuff for my people on the 913 South. Come and hang out with us every Sunday, 2 p.m. Central Standard Time on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports.
What's up, everybody? This is Teran Rodriguez. Are you a fan of volleyball? Are you a fan of Thunder Spikes? Then I have the show for you, Set Point, where I cover NCAA men's and women's volleyball, high school boys and girls volleyball, beach volleyball, and even professional volleyball. Catch the action every week here on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports.
And we are back with the 200th episode of Set Point. Thank you to my previous guest, Mark Rosen, for being a guest on the show. I know it wasn't as long as Avery's interview, but we don't have too much long. As of this recording, we have less than 30 minutes, and I do want to give y'all basically the story of how Set Point came to be. I would love telling the story of how Set Point came to be. So I originally came on as the co-host for our then baseball show, Bases Loaded, and then eventually I was the co-host of The Defining Moment, and I'm also 3 and Out College Edition, and I was also the co-host for Fast Break, back when it was hosted by Phil Jones, Phil Robinson, and Kylam Reynolds. So eventually I wasn't able to be co-host because Larry was busy at the time, and then the Phils were focusing on The Unfiltered Truth, which was another former show on IE Sports Radio, and Kylam was busy doing his thing. And then Larry kind of noticed this, and he's like, well, You have earned your own show, buddy. And I was like, awesome. But at the time, IE Sports Radio was dedicated to talking about all certain sports shows. I think there was only one show that was dedicated, that didn't have like a certain sports designation. And that was Not What It Seems with Caitlin Seam. But that was back in the past. So Larry had the idea of giving me a volleyball show, just because I did a great job of breaking down volleyball in a volleyball segment on the defining moment. And Larry, if you're still listening, that's still probably the greatest idea you could have ever given to me. So thank you for that. And I will just say this, first and foremost, thank you to the listeners and thank you to the fans who have continued to basically be the reason why I keep doing Set Point. Because without you, I don't know if I would do Set Point, because I talk about rising above adversity. If you all remember in the past times I've talked about Set Point, there were moments where I just wanted to stop doing Set Point, just because there was a moment where I thought Set Point wasn't fun, and no one was really listening, and I was still busy with college, and I just felt it wasn't really, I wasn't feeling it. So, but then I eventually got back on the horse and kept riding. And March 1st was probably the most interesting day. Long story short, I waited till the last minute to do a paper, and then I messaged Larry B the day of when I was going to do Set Point, which is when I originally, fun fact, I did Set Point at 11 a.m. Pacific time, 2 p.m. Eastern time on Mondays, because that was the only day I could do Set Point, because I was still in college. And I messaged him, these were my exact words, Larry B, I can't do Set Point today. I'm just too darn busy. I'm going to have to skip this week. I'm sorry, and all that. Okay, maybe those weren't my exact words, but I'm probably paraphrasing. And Larry B was like, that's fine, brother. If you ever need a week off or a hiatus, just let me know. And that was actually the last time I had ever missed a week of Set Point. Back in my early days, I would sometimes do like 2-a-day week of Set Points, which, yeah, not smart. So I've come to the conclusion where if there's something big in terms of news, just tweet about it or just post on social media, and also just make like, something I've also done when it comes to Set Point is I've gotten so comfortable with making these videos from my phone, and I've had to really like get adapted to being in front of a camera. I'm not the most photogenic person, which some of y'all probably know that, but I will say I feel a lot more confident being in front of a camera and talking about some of the best NCAA volleyball matches that the week has. And for those that still like that NCAA volleyball matches on a weekly basis, thank you. It certainly was not easy on my throat, I'll just say that. And every time I messed up, I just really wanted to pull my hair out. But it was well worth it. And I also want to give a shout out to Lindy Zamora and Stacey King for their efforts on letting me attend the Long Beach State and UC Irvine matches. Lindy Zamora is the SID for Long Beach State. I had ties to her back when I was still a student at Long Beach State. Yes, UCI fans, I know you don't want to hear that, but it's the truth. And yes, Hawaii fans, I went to Long Beach State. Y'all can throw your tomatoes at me later. But I also wanted to get involved with going to UC Irvine matches, and it took a little bit of convincing when it came to Stacey King, just because Lindy told me, reach out to Stacey King, this is her email. That's how you're able to reach out and tell her who you are, and then she'll give you a credential. And basically I had to do it again and again and again, and then that was basically how I got adapted to her and whatnot. So, yeah. And then I also went to a couple of Concordia Irvine matches, as well as a few USC matches. USC matches are probably the rarity for me, just because it's kind of out of my range of location, but it's all good. And something that I'm not afraid to admit is I don't drive, but I'm proud of that, and I'm proud to bring you all the best, some good volleyball content, regardless of my status of driving or not. And I hope you all understand that I know I can't be the most mobile person out there, and I know I'm unoriginal when it comes to going to certain venues, but I will bring you some volleyball content. And I hope if there is a big time match, I will definitely bring you the biggest volleyball match content there is to the best of my ability. And I don't think anyone would have predicted me getting a little bit of a partnership with the NVA, just because obviously back in 2021 I liked watching the NVA. Well, 2020 I started watching some of the NVA matches. I didn't even know there was such thing as an NVA until one of my buddies, who was like the social media manager and photographer for the NVA, kind of turned me on to it. And then basically I was seeing some of my friends play in the NVA. I'm like, whoa, the NVA is an actual thing. And I was starting to get hooked on watching the live streams and the matches. And then eventually I started getting it more and more into the NVA by watching more of the matches and commenting. Heck, I even got a shout out from Ira Thor and Nick England saying Teran Rodriguez has always been watching the matches, commenting, and he's kind of been a little bit of a super fan. And Nick England also kind of gave me a little bit of a shout out whenever there's like an error on some of the website, which, you know, mistakes happen. We're all human and whatnot. So yeah. And honestly, I don't think I would have ever predicted myself working with the NVA. Yes, I have a very small role in writing the articles, and I know it gets lack of probably promotion, but hey, for those that check out my NVA articles, you rock. And I definitely do want to give my thank yous to the NVA for helping me out, especially Mark Rosen for, first of all, dealing with the craziness that I had to go through today. He was supposed to come on at 7 p.m., but then my guest called at 7 p.m. because he thought he was going to be on at 7, and then he's like, can I be on at 7 instead of... Can I be on at 7? And it's like, yeah, you can. So it all worked out in the end. And then I also want to thank everyone who I've interviewed. I know I can be a pain when it comes to interviewing you, especially on camera. If you're someone who I've interviewed and you are not the most comfortable person on being on camera, I gotta give you kudos. It's not easy being on camera. And everyone likes to see people on camera. I think that's kind of the new wave thing right there, just because I think audio is starting to move out of being that thing. I think people would rather see a video of a interview instead of just like audio and whatnot. Not that I'm saying that this thing isn't relevant, but I will say that this whole thing is still a thing. Like, podcasts are still a thing. This whole thing is still a thing. And I hope one day I will continue to make audio still a thing. But I think on social media, people want to see, like, interviews in video. Like, for example, when I did the Zoom interviews with Mark Pavlik and Alan Knipe for the NCAA tournament, I think people would rather see me do that interview on video instead of, you know, probably trying to jump through hoops trying to interview them in person and do an audio interview with them, because that's kind of difficult. But overall, I will say this, I've met a lot of amazing people. Like I mentioned, Alan Knipe, Mark Pavlik, Travis Turner I knew back in my junior college days, Sam Schweisky, the Princeton coach, John Speraw, the UCLA men's volleyball coach, Charlie Wade, the Hawaii men's volleyball coach. The list goes on. And I kind of, I asked this question to Avery and to Mark, who have been their favorite players that they've coached, who have been my favorite guests that I've coached a lot, who have been my favorite guests that I have had on Set Point, well, a lot. First of all, Avery was one of them, and Mark was also a good amount, even though I only had him for like 30 minutes due to time constraints. But Travis Turner was another good one back in the COVID days. Craig Pizzanti has been a good recent guest. He was on episode 49 and episode 100. Nick England back on episode 100 was a great guest to have. Sam Schweisky to kick off the year of 2023 was an amazing guest to have. all in all, I just loved having amazing guests on the show. And I could go on, but we only have 15 and a half minutes left as of this recording. But all in all, for everyone, it's just been a fun, amazing 199 episodes leading up to now. And again, I would not have imagined being up to 200 episodes with this, especially with all the hardships that I've dealt with in terms of, wanting to quit doing Set Point, because at that time I was like, is anyone going to really miss a volleyball show? No. But I'm so glad I did not quit, even though sometimes I just didn't feel like I was being listened to. But I'm glad I have a bigger audience, because at the time I felt like I did not have an audience. But then I created the Set Point Twitter account, and now that Twitter account is booming with over 700 followers, soon to be 750. Hopefully not with bots, but I digress. And all in all, I enjoy just doing this whole thing. And I don't know if you all know this guy, Tom Grossi, but one day I'm going to bet on myself, and I am going to basically do Set Point full time. Now, I obviously want to still be involved in the journalism field with like reporting and writing like I'm doing right now with the NVA, but I just want to like do this whole Set Point thing full time and just take it all the way to the top. And because if you all know Tom Grossi, he was a social studies teacher all the way up to 2021, and believe it or not, 2 years ago and yesterday was actually his 2-year anniversary that he quit being a social studies teacher, which I think is rather incredible. If you haven't checked out Tom Grossi, definitely check him out. His podcast is called The Patcast, and my goodness, it's actually pretty good, especially if you're a Green Bay Packers fan. But I definitely am willing to bet on myself. My only problem is this. I need to have a good backup plan, just because it's very tough when it comes to the journalism field. And volleyball, while it is a growing sport, I have other competitors, and obviously I have the fear of running into someone better than me and then being left in the dust. But I can't give up on my dream of being the volleyball podcast, because I definitely do want to say this. I want to one day be the volleyball podcast for everything volleyball, not just NCAA volleyball, but for beach volleyball, the NVA, the AVP, the VNL, high school volleyball, heck, junior college volleyball, whether it's the NJCAA or the 3C2A or CIF Southern Section. Another memorable moment, now that I mentioned the CIF Southern Section, was me covering the CIF state finals between Cathedral Catholic of San Diego and St. Francis of Mountain View. That was the battle of two undefeated teams. I want to say they were a combined 77-0. And even though I had to pay, I think $12 to get in, it was well worth the price of admission. I didn't have a media pass, but I did not give a rat's tail less. I think it was definitely perfect that I had to pay to get in, and I was glad I covered high school volleyball. And honestly, high school volleyball is volleyball too, just because Julia Blyashov was on that Cathedral Catholic team. Yes, she did not play just because she had an ankle injury 2 weeks ago, but she is going to be on that Stanford team, and she is going to do wonders in the near future, especially when Kendall Kipp and Katie Baird graduate. Not trying to shoo them away right away, but I'm just saying Julia Blyashov is going to be that it girl once Katie Kipp graduates. Book it, y'all. But I also just want to say I'm happy that I made so many amazing friends along the way when it came to Set Point and in the 200th episode. Not just with the NVA, but with NCAA volleyball, with all the coaches, players that I've met, and authorized media personnel that I've met. I'm glad I got to meet Cindy Lewis and her son Tiff Wells, of Hawaii. I'm glad I got to meet all of the Hawaii personnel, because all the Hawaii media personnel, or Hawaii media in general, just because I don't get to see them a whole lot, only when Hawaii is in Southern California. But all in all, if you've met me, I definitely want to continue to meet you. And if you've given me advice on how to better myself and how to, be the best version of myself, I will say this, I really do appreciate you. And for those that have continued their support of Set Point, I want to say Set Point kind of blossomed since probably 2021 maybe, or depending on when it first blossomed. I just want to say thank you. If you have been here since Set Point first blossomed, I first of all have to thank you. If you've been a guest on Set Point, I have to thank you. If you've helped grow Set Point in any way possible, I have to thank you. If you've allowed me to interview you as a player or a coach or anyone, I have to thank you. If you've basically listened to Set Point, I definitely have to thank you. If you've done wonders in pulling strings for me, the host of Set Point, I have to thank you. In terms of being the media guy, in terms of doing everything in my power to be at these matches, I have to thank you. You get where this whole thing is going at. It's basically just a laundry list of thank yous. I know I can't thank everybody, and if I miss anyone that I thanked, I apologize. But I really have to thank everybody for all of your support, just because without you, Set Point doesn't amount to any much. But I definitely do want to prove to anyone that I am not forgotten about and that I am someone who is basically willing to talk all things volleyball. Just because at first I didn't even know what an AVP was, and now look at me, I'm going to AVP tournaments, and that's how I met Avery Drost. Because honestly, if I don't meet Avery, I probably don't get his phone number, and I probably don't tell him about episode 200 of Set Point. Also, I don't get this Waiakea water bottle that he gave me at the Huntington Beach Open. So, in all honesty, I will say this. It's just been such a fun ride, and I will definitely continue to keep Set Point going, and I hope that Set Point can be the volleyball podcast for all things volleyball, just like how I'm kind of the guy for the NVA that is the one-stop shop for all things NBA news and whatnot, just because the NBA kind of needs that sort of thing, and they need a Twitter presence and podcast, but I digress. But all in all, I think I've pretty much covered everything. That's the condensed version. I could have gone all the way back and done the chronological order version of this, but I think I have pretty much done everything. I think I've pretty much given all my thank yous and told the story of how Set Point came to be, and I've basically made it through the ups and the downs and whatnot, and I want to be, and again, Mark Rosen basically said this during the interview. Emily Eamon who was great for volleyball, and I want to be what's also great for volleyball, not just on the NCAA side of things, but for the NVA, for the AVP, for every aspect of volleyball. And that's why I'm still adamant on doing this. That's why I haven't taken a week off since March 1st, 2020. That's why I've continued to do this thing since September 30th, 2019. I don't know if I'll be able to celebrate September 30th, 2023, which is going to be the 4-year anniversary of Set Point, but I'm going to do my darndest to make sure I'm going to be celebrating that 4-year anniversary, but time will tell. But on that note, that is pretty much going to do it for the story of Set Point, and I apologize if there wasn't any VNL or any schedule releases that I discussed this week, as I'm going to be saving that for next week, as we'll be back to basically the regular schedule, barring anything hairy doesn't come up. But ladies and gentlemen, that is going to do it for the 200th episode of Set Point. Ladies and gentlemen, it is that time, for the 200th time, to drop the beat, because I'm about to dip like a banana in chocolate. You feel me? Thank you everyone for tuning in to Set Point. I really do appreciate everybody tuning in to the 200th episode. If you listen for almost 3 hours, I appreciate you. If you listen on the playback, I appreciate you. If you listen live, I appreciate you. If you listen at work, I appreciate you. If you listen at any time, any place, anywhere, I appreciate you. Big shout out to Avery Drost and Mark Rosen for being on as guests for the 200th episode of Set Point. I really do appreciate it. And also shout out to Mark Rosen for dealing with the whirlwind of a schedule that was Set Point and all of the craziness. I did not predict any of this would happen. And thank you to the listeners for bearing with me as well. I did not ask for this. This was not scripted, but we made it. For Mark Rosen and Avery Drost and the entire IE Sports Radio family, this is Teran Rodriguez signing off. You all have yourself a great rest of the week. Enjoy the volleyball action. Enjoy the VNL. I will see you all probably Thursday for the SoCal Supreme Sports Show. But until then, have yourself a great rest of the week. I'll see you probably next Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, barring nothing dramatic happens, for Event 5 for the NVA. And again, I'll see you Thursday for the SoCal Supreme Sports Show. I'll be back next Monday for Set Point. Until then, have a great rest of the week. Enjoy the volleyball action. And I will see you Thursday for SoCal Supreme Sports Show. Peace and blessings, everybody. And once again, thank you, everyone. Thank you to Larry B. Thank you to It's Drewski, Davidson Crooks, and everyone in the chat room. Mike, Pat, Adam Karnick for popping in. I really do appreciate you. Shout out to my entire IE Sports Radio family. You rock, you roll. Peace.